Hi everyone, this is Unleash DDN. I'm Jayesh and we have Abhi today from Texas Talaash.
Hi, my name is Abhi. I was on Talaash for 4 years, went to UT as a math major, surprisingly. I lived in Jersey for almost my entire life, then moved to Dallas, working in my life right now for about a year.
You have your own workshop going on too.
One of my friends, Abhilash, he's from Michigan, lives in New York right now. We've done one workshop so far. The next one's going to be September 21st day. Hopefully, a year or two, we can get a bigger crowd of people and maybe go around the country if you want to spread the love.
One of the first things I wanted to talk about was how Texas Talaash formed. How did you feel your first couple of years? Most importantly, how do you guys think about choreo? How do you guys think about your set? How do you guys think about creating a very good performance from the beginning of the season?
Okay. So Talaash formed my freshman year because I think at the time, I mean, even still now, actually, there's a lot of dance teams at UT. There's Saya, Nachbaliye, Punjabawakis, and that's just like fusion team, and then Mohini, that's just fusion
Yeah.
teams. And you have like Texas Bhangra and all those like big style teams. But obviously, UT is one of the biggest state schools, like 50,000 undergrad students. So yeah, Talaash was formed by a few people who I think were actually on Saya and Texas Bhangra in their like sophomore, junior year. And the freshman year was the year where people didn't even really know about what the team was, but it was just one of those things that you kind of found. Whether you were already in the dance circuit or you had friends, it wasn't like Talash was really that big at all compared to teams like Sai and Natchbilia. So I remember going to workshops with Talash, like decent amount of guys, and then you go to like Saya and Natchbilia's workshop, you have 100 people there. And yeah, Talash has definitely grown over the past 4 years. How we've thought about a set has been really different, but it's grown. There's a huge difference between how teams were perceived before COVID and after COVID. For us, at least, COVID was kind of a savior in the sense that we recruited for our second year during COVID, like at the end of, I want to say April and the beginning of September. And the good thing is that Texas didn't exactly follow COVID guidelines. Other schools, especially up north, so we still had somewhat of a campus. Some people were still on campus, still had practices fully masked and things like that. That season was really helpful because even though we didn't have to create a set that was, the same level of any other set in previous years where you have a theme and production and dialogue, it really helped a lot with training the new dancers. We still competed in online comps to stay relevant. It really helped us get that training and momentum going into our 3.0 year, our Cosmos year. We didn't have to reset for 3.0 year. It was like, okay, we have these set amount of dancers. Obviously, we like add a few other newbies here and there, but we actually did have a theme that we were thinking about during COVID year. It was called Prisoner's Dilemma. We changed that theme after our fall comp, which is very
Okay.
interesting. My co-captain was Adi. Ashwin Desai is another guy in the team, but he's an extremely brilliant mind, really good with production and dialogue. He was talking to some of Thar guys, and I think their theme that year was types of brown boys. Every other set prior to COVID had always been a story that people try to focus on. Like, here's a plot, here's main characters, what does the character arc need to be, the rise and the climax, following all those story points.
Yeah.
And one thing that we learned from the ideas that Raftar had was that the set doesn't necessarily need to be something where it's like, here's character A, here's character B, here's a problem, and then here's a solution. You see this a lot with other teams in other circuits where their set isn't based around a storyline. The Bunger team or a Ross team or a classical team or hip hop teams just have an overarching theme and an ad lib that fits the vibe they want to go for. Or they just have a prop or a formation that makes the set flow. We kind of got inspiration from that overarching concept, and we were like, okay, maybe we don't need a theme that follows characters, but if you take something really simple, something really understandable, and in Raftar's case, it was like types of brown boys, and people can like relate to that. People know, oh, this is the gym brat, the frat bro, this is like the simp. Take something really simple as that, and then try to find songs or ideas that can be implemented into that. Because the issue with the story, and teams have done that well too, still, and even now, but it's really difficult to pull off to try to sell an audience or like a judges panel. Here's a story that we made up or that we expect you to know. Let's say like Life of Pi. Life of Pi was incredibly well executed by Northwestern Unabove,
I
and
fully
yeah,
agree.
it's one of the best sets ever. And it's so good that it kind of surpasses all like the maybe I don't know what the theme is. That's how good it is. But a lot of stories fall in that arch where it's if I tell the judges panel a story, why do they care? Do they know what's going to happen? In our case, the plans to the solar system. Almost everyone knows what the plans to the solar system are. If you can make that entertaining with the choreography, the formations, add a few little gimmicks, that's a lot easier to portray to the audience than it is to feed them the story with characters that they might not necessarily care about. There have been teams even that did a story about Romulus and Remus. I'm trying to think, like Lux did that nerve set, false characters, right? But I'd say that first Cosmos year, we really wanted to try to be like, okay, we don't need a storyline necessarily. Here's a progression of events, and how can we make that fun? Interestingly enough, we did still find some issues that we had when it came to making the set matter almost in the sense that you still need some level of an up and down. So we have like in the middle of the cosmos set, like, oh, here's a black hole. You don't need to over explain the problem, just kind of show what's happening with the black hole, and then you're back out of the black hole. I think post DDN, especially with Origins, when they did Joker, it's not necessarily a storyline they did. They just took something that's like kind of mainstream, not mainstream, but kind of almost everyone understands, make it entertaining, add a few gimmicks here and there, and I think that's what creates a good set. The circuit's kind of moved not away from storytelling, but it's added more aspects of entertainment. That makes sense. I remember one thing, I think it was the first spring comp we got, Cosmos here, Aja Nachle. One of the judges, I think his name is Rishi, extremely talented hip hop dancer. At the end of our set, after all the planets do their thing, the final segment is this Bollywood segment. Simki, one of the girls, comes on in this yellow dress, supposed to indicate the sun and supposed to have some message about the sun, and the planets and all whatever it is. And I remember one of the judges saying at the comp, so we got second at that comp. Honestly, I had no idea what was really happening with that last segment or why a girl with a yellow dress came on, but it was such an entertaining set that they loved it. I think we've kind of taken that as our motto. The only way to really have a good performance is if you know on stage that you're having fun and you're entertaining and you're dancing with all your heart and energy. That's something I prioritize a lot as captain, and that's something they did a lot in this last year too. Even if something doesn't make sense, we want to show on our face that we're having fun on stage. If the people dancing on stage are having fun, then inevitably the people in the audience and the judges panel are also going to have fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it's more about the energy you translate and not even just like having fun, but what emotions and what storytelling do. I know you said like not storytelling, but more entertainment. I feel like that's the part where like most DDN stories so far have not reached because you have like, the stories that follow a plot line. But since you know what's coming up, nothing can reach that. No one knows like, stories. If you're trying to imitate it, you're probably going to fall short unless you like ignore the crazy elements. And I think that's what you're speaking to. Is like, it's you can adapt any small thing, but then create like its own unique way of portraying it, and that will create in like entertainment value, but like that story that people can be like, oh, this is something that's really cool and interesting. I loved that black hole segment. And it's interesting because I thought you knew your black hole segment during your odd vid. Because during your odd vid you use that same song, and I think the choreo was a bit different. And I was like, wait, this fully encapsulates what a black hole should be. But it, apparently it's not.
So that segment was a black hole segment. We added, I think Trendsetter was the song afterwards
Yeah.
to kind of add that extra element of EDM and like because the song Goosebumps itself isn't just gonna be like the black. Like, you can't just put a hip hop song and a black hoodie on and expect it to be a black hole necessarily. So the Trendsetter segment afterwards, and shout out to the girls, Dimity, Mahek Twinkle for that because we were kind of like really stuck at that point as to how to portray a black hole. How does the audience even gonna know what a black hole is? Quite literally one of the most unknown things in the scientific universe. How are you gonna execute that in 30 seconds on stage? And it was actually interesting because I think we were really struggling from Falcom to how do we incorporate as many songs as we can into spring, and Goosebumps fit almost perfectly with like how we wanted to keep like a nice hip hop that we still have as clean, that we know like judges like, that we like, add a little bit extra to it with like little formation changes, add some more people, add that trendsetter bit. And yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of compliments at comps that year saying that segment was people's favorite.
It's interesting that you added that. How do I encapsulate the idea of a black hole? In my experience with the teams, people don't recognize there's so much attention to what constitutes the parts of the set. How does the song choice fit in? It's not just putting a black hoodie and expecting the judges to really understand that, but it's more about how does like the EDM. Now that you said it, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's like what a black hole should be like. And that's insane that there's that much thought put into just that one little segment. Could you talk more about how you thought about that choreo for the black hole segment, how you made that formations and how you made sure the music fit the whole vibe?
I want to be honest, that vision was almost fully on the girls.
I'm gonna have to talk to them.
I would probably have all the girls here and then like my co-captains, obviously. I'd say we've been like a pretty collaborative team when it comes to ideas. I've been the captain for 2 years, but I'm not the originator of all the ideas. Their vision for that segment was really good because, like I mentioned, we were kind of really stuck at one point as to like how to make this piece more complex or hype. And even I think the issue that some teams have is this idea like, oh, we have a really good set, a really good segment. How can we make it even better, even better, even better? How can it be better than this team's? You don't necessarily have to change the whole song to do that. You don't have to change the whole choreo. Distinctly remember Simki being like, we kind of did exhaust a lot of the ideas that we had. That piece did go through a lot of iterations over the fall and the beginning of the summer. It was, let's keep a segment we know kind of hits and add little tweaks and changes. I think it was Simki and Twinkle who said, okay, let's try to add this EDM vibe, right? A lot of teams that year and maybe previous years too haven't done EDM vibe where it's really simple choreo but layered really well. All the girls were able to hop onto that and come up with a vision by themselves. Honestly, me and Adi were kind of just, this looks sick. Maybe add this tweak. Maybe this doesn't look as whatever, but they definitely deserve 95% of the credits. It's unbelievable.
I was wondering for you, the captain, how have you grown? How do you think that has contributed to like Talash's growth or even your growth personally?
One major aspect of my growth, and I have to shout out Adi for this too, is Adi was captain. Adi's the year above me, so he was captain during that COVID year, 2.0 year, and Cosmos year. And 2.0 year, there wasn't really much going on in terms of theme production. Here's some choreo, here's some formations, here's a song, string like 6 minutes of it together. So I think a lot of people did really believe in me during my 3.0 year that like I had a vision, I cared about this team. I had improved a lot as a dancer, very specifically after freshman year. Not even like freshman year, I was kind of just like really stagnant with my growth. I grew a lot as a dancer after freshman year and like a little bit into sophomore year too. And so I had a lot of people who had like faith in me. But I think at the time I was still just kind of a very not necessarily shy person, but someone who doesn't imprint my opinion on things. I don't know what the right way to put it is, but I
Yeah,
wasn't
fair
as
enough.
I wasn't as enforcing of a captain. I was very laid back, and it was like really stressful to figure out. Adi was very type A, and I followed in his footsteps when it came to having these strong opinions, right? And I've not been someone that's necessarily strongly opinionated. I've been like before, like in high school and stuff, just like someone that's like in the middle, like all the time on everything. And that's good to be like docile and agreeable. But when you are captain, you just kind of have to make decisions, right? Be on the front foot for things, say things how they are for the most part. And I learned a lot of that from him, being assertive, but obviously in a friendly manner. And I'd say that first semester, I was super, what's the word for it? I can't even think of the word for it. But definitely second semester, I gained a lot more confidence in terms of second semester I gained a lot more confidence in terms of how I wanted to help run the team or like what decisions I wanted to make or like what I wanted to say no or yes. I wanted to stop being wishy-washy as I've used to been. And another thing that I've definitely grown to be was before Talaash, I'd say, like my entire life, I've been a huge procrastinator. Like absolutely, like an assignment's due, I will do it in the last minute. Maybe not even do it at all. Once I got this responsibility for captain, and obviously it's something that I cared about a lot, I kind of went in the complete opposite direction. Where it's plan for everything. I remember actually Adi would bang out a schedule from October till February of what needs to be done on an hour by hour basis. And obviously we didn't follow that to a T, but it helps him like think and organize, oh, what things need to be done when we get to this checkpoint, when we get to this checkpoint. And that kind of layered off on me, think very far in advance. Maybe not too far in advance, but don't think too much in the present necessarily, but have an idea for the big picture, like what to look out for. And it made me very attentive to those things. And then I think my junior year tired me out a lot. So senior year, I didn't have the same energy when it came to necessarily executing how I wanted to. But I had learned a lot from my junior year as to how to deal with certain situations, how to deal with time constraints, how to plan for the future. And so even though I had less energy senior year, it was easier for me to still navigate senior year. And also another big thing for senior year was that I had two co-captains instead of one. So as straining as like the captain of any dance team is, if you have two people by your side, so a total of three people, one person has a bad day, or one person just having a bad weekend or whatever, two people can still like take the mantle and push the team forward. As opposed to if it's just one team, as opposed to if it's just two captains, if one captain goes down, it's kind of like, oh shit, now I have to lead like 35 people. So I think a lot of my I would say a lot of my leadership qualities came from Adi. Senior years, Nikhil and Anubhav were all seniors. All kind of had all had different like majors and different schedules and stuff. But we did a really good job of being able to maintain and balance each other's personalities when it came to like all three of us didn't feel the need to wake up and have a good day and put on this fake happy smile. There'd be days where I'm like, guys, like I can't do this today. Like I'm having a horrible time this weekend, and they'd be like, no, Punk, we got it. And I would say nothing at practice, and them two would perfectly have it handled. But like other times where they would be having the same situation, and it kind of like rotates like in and out. And I think one thing I learned about leadership was you do not have to put this all on yourself. I think what we did well was delegate. Obviously, there can be too much delegation sometimes where there's no clear vision and ideas are all over the place and everything's a mess because one person thinks this, another person thinks something else, and you're trying to find a way to. But I think the big thing is that if you trust your team members, if you trust your board members, you trust your co-captains, figure it out, it eases a lot of stress on you and it eases a lot of the onus on you to figure it out immediately, right? I think that's the big thing I learned senior year especially. Don't put it all on yourself. Find people you trust and that share similar ideals when it comes to running the team or the ideas you have like dance wise, and let them take the mantle if you need to.
What I think I've heard from the captaincy perspective is just there's a lot more that you can offer than just being you. Like if you can offer being able to give other people a voice, give other people like leadership and show up and learn from other people as much as possible, that helps you be the best captain instead of thinking I have to be the person who is able to be taking charge and be there in every moment, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's something to learn? And I was wondering if there are examples that made that obvious for you in your time. This is something I should do.
I think in the beginning I was just really not intimidated, but just kind of scared as to how to navigate doing everything like captain related. Because at the end of the day, I'm still like a college junior, college senior, managing people who are like basically the same year as me, maybe like a year younger. It's not like I'm the CEO with 25 years of experience managing into it. So I think one thing I've learned is that I am just like anybody else on this team when it comes to the number like when it comes to like my age and maturity. So I can't expect to like just all of a sudden have all these leadership skills, like, figure out how to make people come on time or like how to enforce certain things. And I've learned during that 4.0 year, we had a decent amount of calls with judges after comps if they were available for critiques on our set, but like in more theory. Because obviously judges and meetings are like 5 minutes. Each judge talks for like a minute. But I remember we had a couple calls, 40 minutes a week after the comp. The judge would watch the set and actually give, okay, this is what needs to be done. Oh, not what needs to be done, but this is my thought on this segment, this segment, this segment, this segment. We had not alumni, but we had like other older experienced dancers. There's like a dude named on Mod. He was in Austin that week, and he like came in and instantly made our R&B so much better. We didn't even show him, we didn't even teach him the choreo. He taught us how to dance. Stay within your frame, really milk out moves, right? He taught us a lot when it came to dancing ability. And we just had a lot of different meetings and calls with people who are way more experienced than us to come into practice or come in and tell us captains, these are like our thoughts. This is stuff that I did when I was a captain. This is stuff that I've done for my dance team. And I think just that year overall, it was how can we get as much knowledge as possible from these other people and use that to our advantage rather than trying to stay in this bubble of just Texas Talaash and we don't know, like, even though like it's 30 guys, we're still all in the same bubble, right? We all use the same things. I made friends with members on other teams and they tell us, oh, they do this before practice, we do this after practice, this is something we do on the side, this is how we send messages, this is how we clean. I think if you add those elements, you don't have to like take every element, but try it out, see how it works. Does that work better for you? How can you amend it so that you're not wasting too much time? It's not necessarily putting your ego aside. That sounds a little weird, but understanding that I am still a college junior, college senior. I don't know everything. I can ask people with different experiences, schools, team styles at different ages, and see how they approach things and how can I kind of mold that to our situation.
Yeah. One thing I'm taking away is the most knowledgeable person is the person who asks.
100%.
In terms of that, what do you think you were thinking of when you asked? And like another part of it, especially for smaller teams or newer teams, like they don't have those connections and contacts. But in Texas Talash, you guys are in Austin, so you guys kind of at a competitive advantage in terms you have these teams out here able to like be able to teach you dance. But like for us, like Virginia Cal, we did have some mentors, but we're in the middle of Charlottesville. There's no big dance company around here that we could come and talk with. So what would you suggest in terms of that? But also, what were your biggest questions that you would ask people?
The main thing is that Talaash, I think, was still like obviously a very small team, 1.0, 2.0 year, but you have teams like Saya and Nutsbully, and this is like a big dance community in Austin that helps. Our first kind of addition to that was Vrutik. Vrutik was on Cutthroat. He was like he like lived in Detroit, went to I think Wayne State, and he was like graduated class of 2019 and 20. He like moved to Austin that year for a job. Ashwin Desai is the reason we have almost any connection we have because he's the type of person that will just be like, "Oh, this guy knows something. Let's just ask him." And the worst thing he's gonna say is, "I can't. Like, I'm busy." So we asked him, but like, "Oh, we know he was like extremely talented at Bunga and hip hop, danced for Bunga teams in Detroit. Can you like come to practice? Watch this video." Talash. Whenever we ask people, it slowly becomes an infection. Where Vrutik was not definitely not intending to at all that year. He's 24, he has a job, but he loved helping us. And it started off first as, oh, he'd come and, critique this video that we sent for choreo, give us his thoughts. Then it'd be like, oh, you know what, I'll come to practice one day. Eventually, he's on Legend stage dancing with us. Because we just asked, like, do you want to dance? Do you want to do this? How can you help us? And like you mentioned, the most knowledgeable person in the room is someone who asks, even if they don't give you something insightful, maybe they put you in a different direction, but I think any piece of advice almost that anyone gives is helpful in some way as long as you know how to apply it. That's the big thing.
One thing, even for smaller teams who still go to comps, like one thing you said right now is that you would ask other captains, hey, what do you guys do? How do you get better? Any team can do that. They can go to a comp and ask, hey, what do I want to get better at? What do you guys do? What are the best things you've learned from other teams? Is that how it played out? Let's do a dual role play, right? I'm at a comp, I'm some well-known team, and you're like a new team coming to try and compete, but also get improve. What would you do?
The first things I would ask is how do you guys? So I guess
Wait,
we.
we're doing role play. How would you
Sorry.
approach?
Okay. I gotta be.
Okay, I'll give you more
Okay.
direction. I'll set the scene.
Okay.
I just did
Perform.
Mixer. I finished Mixer, the performances
Hmm.
at Mixer, like the hip hop segment. And I just went on. And, like, I did a really cool hip hop segment, right? And it was like
Hmm.
crazy. You're like, whoa, that's cool. I want to go approach that. Okay, that's the scene.
Yo, Jaish, your team last comp absolutely killed it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you guys like? What do you guys like? What's the secret formula? How do you get everyone so involved in the team? How do you guys clean? Like, I want to add this to what we do.
I'd love to talk about that. I think there are certain things. Okay, now you fill it in.
One big thing that we learned was kind of this idea of togetherness because and really being together in the sense that you spend so much time dancing with these people, going to comps, you're making all the same sacrifices. Some people make friends within the team and hang out. At least for us, there's very rare few circumstances where people actually know what's going on in other people's lives, or especially with like dudes specifically. You don't actually always say, I really appreciate you for this, or this is like something that's really close to my heart. And one thing, when we went to Tamasha 4.0 year, my senior year, one of our liaisons, his name was Erish, captain of Kurbani at the time. And he was also just like really forward and with helping us. He would say, yeah, they did a cabin trip last weekend, like the entire team, and he like sent us this whole doc where it's kind of like not necessarily wellness exercises, but like for example, one thing was like here is so one thing they did a lot was meditation at the beginning of practice for 5 to 10 minutes. Just put on like some lo-fi Bollywood music and just sit. Turn the lights off, just sit in silence. Close your eyes, right? And that's all. That's like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. But oh no, we gotta get a run through it. We gotta go. We gotta go. But if everyone just takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes to like breathe in, right? Just slow down, like process what happened in your day. Then everyone goes into practice together, like kind of acknowledging what happened in their day, and everyone is at practice very present. Or another thing that they did was everyone is in a circle. So like all 30 people on the team, or whatever, are in a circle, and yeah, all 30 people are in a circle, and everyone just goes around just saying one thing they appreciate about their lives, and like screw dance, like not doesn't even have to be dance related. Just like one thing they loved about like this past year, and one thing they really don't like, things like that. Another exercise that they did, which is kind of hard to explain, but basically it was an exercise where everyone is in a circle and everyone has their eyes closed. There's one moderator, and the moderator is gonna choose at random, maybe 5 to 6 people to stand in the middle of the circle. The moderator is then going to ask a question like, name someone who you think gives it their all at practice. Each of those 5 people are going to tap on one person's shoulder while the other person's blind, while the other person closes their eyes. And then you ask another question, that's who is someone that brings joy to practice? Or another question is, whose ideas are consistently really helping the team out? And and then you kind of switch around the people in the middle for the new people. And even though you're on the outside of the circle and your eyes are closed and you just feel a tap on your shoulder, it like really does a lot for the team morale. Not team morale. Does a lot for the individual morale, and especially people maybe who don't feel as connected to the team. That if they get tapped on the shoulder, it's, oh, I feel like appreciated. I don't know who said this. I don't know like why they said it. But if you heard something that's like someone asked the question, who brings joy to practice, and someone anonymously taps you on the shoulder, you just have that little like oomph about yourself, and you feel good. And that's an example of one exercise. And Erish was someone who like really helped send a whole doc about it. But this idea of being together, being present, trying to get rid of those like inner cliques on the team, inner circle, outer circle type thing. And that is one of the best things we learned from anyone we ever asked. Because you can kind of get dance advice from almost anyone, but to get advice specifically on how to help a team fix its chemistry is a lot more beneficial to the overarching kind of path or journey that you want to take, because you're spending so much time with this team. You might as well get to know them and what they like, what they don't. So yeah, I think that was one of definitely the most beneficial pieces of advice we got.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I think there are two parts within that. A dance team is a dance team, but more importantly, it's a team. And the dance will come if you are like all together, all able to do the thing that you're trying to put yourself towards. One thing I saw in your vlogs is that you guys kind of give up hype speeches, you give places where you can practice intentionality. Did you also visualize yourself dancing and spend time being present in that space? How much do you think that helps?
I think it helps a lot. I remember 1.0 year, we had a lot of fun, obviously, at practice, but we didn't necessarily have a level of togetherness that we had for 3.0 and 4.0 year. And Anubhav, shout out Anubhav, because I think this genuinely helped. I think that comp we had, Tamasha 3.0, was almost the jump start to everything since then with Talaash. We went into that. So just some context, the Masha that year was early, like middle of October. We were preparing for fall comp, expecting it in mid-November, and we had practices over the summer. We thought we were ahead of schedule almost, or like on schedule at least, for a November fall
Hmm.
comp. And I think maybe like 3 weeks, I want to say it was the middle of September, we find out that Tamasha is actually in a month, not 2 months. And we're like, oh shit, we are not prepared for this. We had achieved nothing in Kalash. We didn't win anything. Even during COVID, we didn't win any comps. And we kind of went into this comp like, we want to win, but we know that there's teams like Kurbani, Raftar, Saya. I'm trying to think of other teams that were there. Sazish looked really good from what we heard from other teams of that year. And we were extremely scared, and we kind of were kind of adopting this mentality of all these teams can do all they want, and we can hear all about what other teams are doing, and oh, this segment that this other team has is really clean, or like we know that this team's ahead of schedule, or this team is doing 12-hour practice days, like how are we going to compete with that? And it's easy to get caught up comparing yourself to other teams. Those 2 weeks locked in, had a schedule, and like obviously we had to have long practice hours for that too. But we kind of had this mentality where we're only going to focus on ourselves when it comes to how we obviously maybe we're still interested as to what other teams are doing, but we're going to stay really locked in on ourselves as to how we want to execute. And like, as captains, you probably know other teams and know other people in other teams. Don't tell the team necessarily that Kurbani is doing all these practice hours because that'll scare them, right? Try to keep them like locked in, focused on our own set, because especially when you get to at comp, being at that venue is a much different feeling than at practice. right? At practice, you can chill out a little, but at comp, at that venue, the adrenaline's through the roof, and you start worrying about what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? What if we miss this count? Like, what's going to happen? And we wanted to. I was very particular about this, especially. We can be crucifying to the team to get them in shape, but those last 3 days before comp, only positive vibes. On Tuesday, if the same issue is there on Thursday, say it in a different way. Start being more positive about where you want to be. Get that, envision that trophy. I actually remember a lot of, I would send a lot of motivational messages in the Slack, and it became like a writing exercise to me. And it's super cheesy looking back at it now. Like I compiled it all at once because I remember reading that stuff. So cheesy to read. I just see so many TikToks about motivation and quotes. I just wanted to put it in, try to galvanize this team. It was really about the positive mentality. Like, you might think we're screwed. Maybe you do think, maybe as captain, I thought we were screwed. Seeing other teams, holy shit, this team is amazing. You really have to focus on yourself specifically and not worry about what any other team is, because that can get into your head. And I remember that comp, there was a capacity issue. Even though we were like the fifth or sixth team to go, after we saw Sazish, the first team, we had to go backstage, go outside. So we didn't see teams 2, 3, 4, 5. Sazish killed it. Like their first segment of that comp had us shaking. What did we do? It was a good thing we didn't see any other team. We were all freaking out. Adi and I were trying to be as level-headed as possible, because if we freak
Yeah.
out, everyone else is going to freak out more. Anubhav just gave this, I think it was the Tamasha 3.0 vlog, the hypest speech ever. That was his thing for the rest of that year and even into next year. But like, before comp, we always just, because we always have a lot of energy anyways, we would just have this. We would even ask liaisons, like, we just need like a room backstage somewhere where we can just like yell, like just absolutely go like bananas, yell some really really motivational shit, so that when we're on stage, we're all hyped together. We're all like, we're all in this. No one person is worrying about anything besides the fact that they're gonna murder it on stage. The hype speech has always been a consistent thing. I remember even like last year when me, Nicola, and above have all graduated by then, we all flew to, actually no. So there was they had a comp. Talaash had a comp in Maryland Minza, that I came to, and then they also had a comp in Houston, Nusha, which a bunch of more of the alumni came to. And even I would just, they had a pretty bad time with practice hours. They were all really tired. I tried to keep spirits up. Same with Nusha. I'm pretty sure Anubhav, even though he was an alumni at that point, just give some words of wisdom, get them hype. That hype speech before a comp brings a level of togetherness needed for a team to perform at the level you want to on stage.
Yeah. One extra thing is the idea of togetherness. A hype speech creates that idea, but I think some Bungar teams pray before they go on stage. I think Moksha, a classical team, they do a hymn, get that idea like, okay, we're here together doing this dance. Like, it kind of speaks to the thing of like dance as an art form and dance as expression. Because if you're scared looking at the other teams, you're not going to be expressive. You're not going to be who yourself are. You're not going to be there, that person in that present moment. You're just going to be dancing afraid. But so you need to dance, even if it's not hype, it's just dance being present and being able to show your expressions and just be in that moment.
Another level of, it's not necessarily togetherness, but just like being locked in as a together collective. I've never really done this as much unless I've been really worried about like a specific section of the choreo. But a lot of people on the team, maybe the day before, not the day before, like the day of comp, when we're at the venue, they would go over some cleanings, and like they'd spend an extra 5 minutes outside of, well, maybe we're going last in short order, we have a while to go. Some people, like during first half of the short order, would go outside like to any space near the venue and it's like practice something. And they didn't really care if another team's watching. They didn't really care if, another team's, wait, what are they doing? Why are they here? Shouldn't they be in the crowd? They were just so locked in, and I got to get this right. And I think that, and slowly more and more people started doing it, where it's, you have like groups of like people like in this corner of the venue, in this corner of the venue, this corner of the venue, working on small sections together. I feel like if, I don't want to say if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have placed in those comps, but it shows that level of, I'm gonna just focus on my. I remember Legends year. I've never really been the person to worry too much about the choreo before a performance, but Legends Cosmos year, we went seventh or eighth. Show order was like, we should be in the audience for the first half, then backstage, then on stage. I remember it was me and Vutik just like freaking the hell out about, oh my god, I just don't want to see another team. I cannot watch another team right now. We'd get in our heads. I'm just gonna listen to the mix over and over, marking the choreo, working on expressions, ironing out the small details, rather than worrying about what another team's doing.
Yeah. One thing I liked about that story is a captain can't dictate it. A team dictates that. If a team chooses to practice outside and do all that. So it's like that idea of togetherness is at the end of the day is what makes you win and strive forward. A captain can only do so much unless the team comes through. I feel like that's sometimes forgotten that sometimes it's how you show up as an individual on this team and as a team. The team is like a different entity and you can't like necessarily give, oh, this is because of what we did together as a team. But that's mainly what's always been the reason like most people like at least I've what I'm hearing in your case is why people win. It's not because of one person, it's because of how the team works together.
To kind of piggyback off that, I think I've had people asking me after competitions, how does Talash have so much energy? It's hard to explain. I think I've mentioned this before, but Talash, one of my friends, Bhavna, almost describes Talash as like this infection. Everyone has bunga fever. And I think it's because, and I would like to believe I was a part of this, but when you're a newbie on the team, you see the captain and upperclassmen have this near obsession with dance. It gets you to go, oh, I want to be there. If they look like they're having fun, then you want to be a part of that. That's a human thing to do. The only real structure to how a team can be successful, regardless of theme, choreo, set, production, is if you genuinely love dance and people can see that on your face, they will also be motivated to be just as good as you are, or they'll be motivated to be even better than you are. And showing that infectious love about I want to be there, I want to look this good, I want to get this right. If you're able to get that message across the board rather than the captain just telling you exactly, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this. You can tell people what they need to do, but you can't tell people what they want to do. It's like that quote about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it, right? That idea of if you're able to show, and this applies for anything too, even like a startup business. If you join a startup business and like the person who started it, the CEO, shows incredible drive and motivation, always working on this aspect of the project, then you as a new hire are gonna also, if he looks like he's having fun with it and like he looks like he's being entertained by what he's doing, then you're gonna also want to be a part of that collective effort.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted though to fully mention one person, even though it's a team of niche. I just wanted to get this extra perspective because I don't think people recognize the social chair's impact on the team because at least what I don't you can totally give your own explanation and prove me wrong and say this is not true at all. But at least what I've seen in the vlogs, like everything so far, like Manish kind of carries in terms of being able to create a culture and being able to create memories that people can look back upon and be like, oh, I had a really good time. And like he has infectious energy, making fun of you while doing his like monologues or stuff like that. It's just like he has a poster right behind you. That type of person, even if they're not captain, even if they're not anything, like being a social chair and being able to like create a culture that a team can be a part of is so much more valuable than sometimes maybe even a captain.
Benish was not the social chair. We had a social chair that would do help with the planning the socials and like doing mixers with other stuff. Manish was like the
Yeah.
chair, but I guess it kind of bleeds into the social aspect because he was still like partially involved when it came to Instagram posts and TikTok ideas. That's more social chair. Manish with the vlogs. I remember in high school I used to do this a lot where I would record Snapchat videos a bunch, but I think once I got to college, I stopped being on my phone and recording things. There'd be times like in college where it's like, oh, I really wish I had memory of this. I'm glad I wasn't on my phone recording everything and I lived in the moment. But I do wish I could watch a recording of the boys being boys. And Manish is such a sweet guy for making this poster for 18 seniors. All the vlogs, I'm someone that's not necessarily that can create content like out of thin air, but Manish can just like, go up to someone and ask a fun question, or record something funny. He has this infectious energy.
I think he's just a person who brings fun and joy to people in the team and that spreads around.
Manisha is one of the few people I know who legitimately does just like I remember one time, not even dance related. Just like we lived on the same floor. In college, it's easy to wait till you hang out with the next person. There's always so many social things happening. You're just gonna see them. I remember one time Manish just walked in and was like, "Hey, what's up?" And that's so underrated because people don't actually do that anymore. They just ask like, "How you doing? What's up? What's new?" And Manish is one of those types of people, and I think it's a super underrated quality, especially as someone when I was captain. I was always like worrying about so many different things that even I would sometimes just forget to say hi. I'd just be like, "Why you late?" Super cutthroat, super straightforward. Like, what happened? But like Manish and other people on the team would like, you kind of like everyone's a human, right? Like you just don't need to ask, "How's your day? What's up?" And Manish is someone. Also, side note, as everyone probably knows. Incredibly talented with any tech stuff, the intro videos. But yeah, he's extremely loving person.
Do you think that created like a really good team presence, have contributed to that, like that togetherness feeling?
A lot of people contribute to that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
especially I'd say almost everyone except the captains were always worried about so many other things. People like Manish, Midi, Mahak, Simki, I could name like literally the entire team actually, that kind of like brought it together. They brought the level of seriousness down. We're still a fun team. And I've learned that from them. Like I've learned that from the other members of the team that it like yes, we are in like a maybe we don't have much time today, but we're still trying to have fun. We're trying to be relaxed. And that helped us also lower our tension. Obviously it'd be our job to make sure the seriousness is still at a certain standard, but people like Manish and other people on the team would help bring that level down. And if they needed to be quiet because we were stuck for time, they would.
Mhm.
But you don't have to run practice like a military boot camp. You can relax a little bit.
Next point I did want to bring up, I know you talked about this, was Texas Galosh being an all-male team, but then there's girls on the team too who've have made a huge impact. The black hole segment was a huge thing. So I was wondering what your thoughts. Last week we with Akshay we talked about all female bias towards all female teams. Did they actually place lower, surprisingly a lot lower than all female teams? And then they don't necessarily always get the same type of not respect. Their expectations are higher. When we have all male teams, does it feel disrespectful sometimes to call yourself an all-male team when there are females on the team? Also, how do you recognize their contributions? It's a loaded
No,
question.
that's fair. There's a lot of different avenues to go with this. When Talaash was created, there were two co-ed teams and there was one all guys team, one all girls team. But like I mentioned, in a huge school of 50,000 students, even 4 or 5 fusion teams is not enough, especially when Texas does have. I don't think, to be fair, actually, I don't think Texas at the time had really any strong competitive dance teams. That was like a lot of California teams like Lashkara and Azad that controlled the circuit. Those teams were consistently placing at Legends. I think 2019 to 2023 was kind of like Texas, like everyone like UT and UT Austin and like all these other schools in Texas like really like love dancing a lot more. And you see that now in the placings. I can't speak on behalf of the 1.0 board members. The launch was made with the intent of having this guys on the team, all guys team. Most people can agree going into college, even when people try out for these teams, the girls are more talented than the guys. The girls probably had more dance experience with Bharatanatyam or Bollywood. They're also just more disciplined. They know how to use their bodies. When I first joined dance, I did not know how to move, right? And I think the Losh at first was like this space of it's really difficult for any dude who wasn't trained to make any team that wasn't all guys, right? When you try to join a team like Saya, if you're a dude that wants to join Saya, you have to be like really athletic at least, or like really good at dancing from the get go. Then there's so maybe 3 guys and 12 girls, right? Because you're going to be very hard to find 12 dudes better than 12 trained girl dancers. There's a lot of interest for an all guys team. Having an all guys team in the first place kinds of give this space of more when I first joined Talash, none of us knew how to do anything. I think they took everyone that tried out. I don't think that would happen on Saya or Netchbellier, like a co-ed team with all the dudes that make it, all the dudes that try out make it. That's the first thing. I think the second thing was we kind of made a decision to add a few girls to the roster. We got this idea from Raftar. I think Raftar had one girl, Bharati. She was the manager for Raftar. And she helped with, actually, I don't know what she helped with, but I'm assuming she was helpful in a lot of aspects to the team. We added a few girls to the team to help with choreo and vision and stuff. And I think a lot of it comes back to what I said earlier about we didn't want to restrict ourselves to just the people on the team, the guys that made the team, know exactly what they're doing. These girls, almost any other girl that dances, has so much more infinite knowledge about how to choreo, formations, how to clean, fundamentals and stuff that we kind of wanted to incorporate that into our team. Even as much as we've danced in practice, we are nowhere near to where the girls are just because of the level of confidence they have in terms of their movements. They stay within the pocket. They don't overextend. They stay powerful, strong. Every single day when we come to practice, sometimes I'd be like, dude, you're doing like a charity service. You shouldn't. You should join a hip hop team. Just leave. You're too good for us. I think the more anyone is involved with the dance team to some degree, they're gonna want to be more involved with the production, the choreo, and the behind the scenes stuff, and then dancing more and things like that. The We still wanted to make it safe space sounds like a weird word to use, but like still have a team where the guys, not the focal point, but like all these on the team joined to dance in an opportunity where they might not have had if they joined another team. A lot of the dudes on our team have had the opportunity to grow because we're an all guys team. I will be honest, I don't know if on any other team most dudes would improve in an all guys team because the girls are so good on co-ed teams that it's hard to just put like this newbie dude in front of the girl. Why would you? He's not good. When we were with Talaash, it was like we're all mediocre as shit. So we're just gonna put all of us on stage. We're all gonna improve at the same time. We're all gonna improve together. I think that definitely helped a lot. I don't know if I would be the same dancer if I hadn't joined Talaash. There's more to say about that.
What I've heard is like an all boys female all boys team is to create a space for male boys who have not male boys boys I'm gonna say boys teams have, as you've grown up, you've not necessarily always been part of dance, and I've had that same aspect too. So then now this is an opportunity for me to grow in a space that's not necessarily been not available, but just something I've not necessarily experienced as much. But then I think what I actually talked about last week is that even with that, and like we've recognized that like females can dance a lot better. They have various different movements. They know their bodies sometimes more and with confidence. It's all males teams have placed significantly higher than all female teams. That's like a disparity is interesting because if males have not had a chance to dance the whole life, then like how are they placing much higher is one thing, which we don't have to talk about right now, but one of the things I wanted to learn more about your team is like knowing that, then how do you make sure your females on your team are valued and respected?
So that was the next point I was going to get into. That's something we had to learn to adapt because they were doing a charity service by working with us, and we still wanted to give them respect. They spent time with the choreo. We wanted to give something in return. We were hesitant about giving them a spotlight in terms of like they're a lead or something. Senior year was different because we had the same goals. They didn't want to do the same practice hours because they're already good at dancing. They don't need to come to practice all the time anyways. But they still had, other things to worry about, like other priorities. I think one thing we tried, I want to say the story about Adi and I'm going to take full accountability here. When we placed at the Masha that first year, Adi and I as captains did not do a good job of I think it was one of those things where we all knew we appreciated the girls for what they did as captains and as team members, but we didn't do as captains. We didn't do a good enough job of making that clear to them, legitimately giving them a shout out or a specialized shout out rather than just thanks to everyone. I think last year's team that placed at Legends did a good job of that too from the get go. But we had to not learn necessarily, but we had to learn to be more open with how we appreciate things. I'm not someone that's going to say, I love you for this all the time, but you have to be open about how appreciative you are when someone is spending all their time, coming to practice and like cleaning and doing other things they weren't asked to do. They could leave if they wanted to. They're such talented dancers. They don't have to help us. That was something we learned to navigate when it comes to not handling the team, but like giving the team the appreciation that they deserve. And from then on, we would make it a point. Yes, I know in my heart of hearts that I appreciate what the girls have done for the team, but they're not going to know until we tell them, right? You be very vocal with that kind of thing. Otherwise, they're just going to think that, oh, we're just practicing. No one's mentioning our efforts. So I think that's something that we learned. We took accountability for that specific incident. And I think since then, at least this year and last year, they've done a good job with that.
Got it. Okay. And I just wanted your insights on the all female teams placing lower than all male teams. You had any insights on that? Though some of the things we talked about that could contribute to this bias is just like sometimes crowd reaction goes wild for more boys. The expectations for boys are lower, so sometimes when you match those expectations, people go more, oh wait, that's so good, even though a female lead is sometimes always performing at a higher level. Like even for me personally, like I'm forgetting the word, but I've had that bias too because like, UTD Rough Guard, they had their classical segment this year, and I was like, oh my god, that's so hype. Hit Mastana had a similar segment, but I didn't think of it as much, even though it was more put together and a lot more. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts.
I think there is a bias towards all guys teams. As a dude, I will admit that when I watch performance, in terms of wowed entertainment factor, I do appreciate the all guys team set more. But that is because I'm not trained in classical or Bharatanatyam, like a style where an all girls team would excel in. Whereas like you see hype for Bhangra and stuff, like I will take that into consideration. But then you gotta take apart. Here's the entertainment value, what the audiences love, But then here's what the judges should think, right? Is it well executed? Is it just hype, or is it really messy? Are the fundamentals bad? I think it's done a better job balancing recently. By the beginning, it was a problem. At least what I've learned from Talash was that I think that we did a really good job with the hype factor. Cosmos placings were Jhalak as third. Lux was like is a co-ed, but like a lot of girls, they got first. And then I think Buckeye Fusion also got fourth. Those teams, as predominantly girls teams, Buckeye Fusion obviously has really incredible Bunga talent on their team. Drexel Jellic had really cool concepts. The floor for an all guys team is higher than an all girls team. The guys team will just bring more hype automatically. If you're a team like Jellic or Buckeye Fusion or Lux or Chelka, for example, that you can still point. It'll be harder for sure. I'm not saying that the girls teams don't have it harder, but I do think that there have been a lot of teams with predominantly girls that do succeed a lot. I think Saya is another. I think Saya is a co-ed team that literally places like first everywhere they go, like second, third, and they've done a good job keeping the. They're able to have the hype of the Bhangra, but also be able to sell like the hype for classical styles known by girls.
What do you think have you brought to your captain slash training and dance together to really improve? We've had conversations so far about 80% 20% rule, Bungara guy who you've learned from, who has a blog, and something else. I just wanted to learn more about those specific things. Like, and then also different members of the dance group counting before the set start.
One main thing in terms of just like you can see, I guess, with leadership was that you are the captain of the team, but you're not like running a factory, right? These people are still human. They should be able to think for themselves. You can get used to as captain counting off every single time. And the team will dance. When you do that and you're constantly the one saying stuff, A, you're gonna sound like a broken record half the time. And B, you're really just training them to listen to your voice. But you're not training them to use their brain. There'll be times when I'd ask Yuvan, okay, Yuvan, you count. And then he counts like 5, 6, 7. It'd be really funny because when someone is asked to count, they might be like, wait, what? Because they zoned out for a few seconds. Or like another person has a voice crack while saying 7. Or another person like forgot the tempo. It's like a funny moment here and there. But it kind of makes everyone, I think doing that, something as simple as like having random people on the team start the count off for when you're cleaning a segment has everyone so much more locked into each other rather than listening to you like you're some like military general. Everyone's more focused. Oh wait, I might get called next. I gotta be paying attention. I gotta be ready to start on beat. Just because you're the captain, you don't have to run a factory. And the best way to do it is as the year progresses, the team should be able to think for themselves. They shouldn't have to be listening to just your voice. The ideal situation is by the time it's March and you've already done like a competition, you could legitimately leave the room for 35 minutes and practice would still be going. That's the ideal situation. You shouldn't necessarily have to be running the team the entire time because at that point you've been with the team for 6 months. They should know what to do. And if you can train them to do that, then that's better. It's easier for you. That's less stress for the captain to figure everything out. In terms of individual dancing, two things. My freshman year, I was pretty athletic, but stagnated in growth. I was in 2 out of 3 songs for the AV, but then I was also in 4 songs out of 10 by the end of the season. Some freshmen weren't in the AV at all, and were in like 7 segments by the end. And I learned I just didn't use my brain when I was dancing. I was moving, actively thinking about flexing, or like actually actively thinking about where this arm goes. My brain would just go on autopilot mode when I would hear critique, and then my brain goes on autopilot mode when I like do the moves. It was not as intentional as it needed to be. I think I learned that later, and that helps when you start to actually use your brain. If you be smart about what you're doing, that'll help. I think another thing that I learned in terms of teaching or critiquing is actually no, rewind that. One thing I learned about just learning something specifically is, especially as a new dancer, there's so much to learn. There's so much to work on, like expressions. In Bunga, you need to be like bouncy, your shoulders, and like Bollywood, you need to flex, have your chin up. In hip hop, you need to stay in the pocket. All these different elements of dance. When you're a newbie, you're kind of like, I don't know how I can process all of it. But the only real way you can, like, everyone has one thing to work on that'll fix like 85% of other things. If you're able to work on that one thing over and over, that's much better than working on 5 things and getting marginally better. That's also a general life motto. In terms of dance, you don't necessarily have to figure everything out at once. You just need to work on one thing, get really good at it. Something as simple as your facial expressions. If you work on facial expressions, that'll bring your dance up by 50%, even if it's just one thing. Another thing I try to do a lot in how I critique people is that I feel like a lot of people, when they send critiques about other people's dancing, it's either negative sounding or helpful. There's a difference between saying this move looks trash versus, okay, you need to flex your arm. Think about actively flexing your arm at this moment. You'll feel the tension. There's a huge difference. I'm saying like the same idea, but there's a huge difference.
Jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Not do you look bad, but what's wrong versus how to fix it.
100%. The idea of actively helping someone rather than just pointing out what's wrong are two very different, they're two very distinct actions, right? And especially when you have a newer dancer, they don't necessarily know how to fix it unless you tell them, right? If you're able to give some actual thoughtful insight on what they need to focus on, how it should feel, what it should look like, they can understand where to go with that. Another thing with critiques is don't just send 10 things that need to be improved. Add something that look good. If someone sent me a video of like their bunga piece, I'm gonna say, okay, maybe this needs work, but I love your stance, your posture. Keep that. If you tell someone they have to work on 10 million things, but don't give them a single good piece of output, they're like, oh, I'm doing everything wrong. But if you're able to tell them at least like a few things they're doing right, it's a boost of self-confidence, like I'm in the right direction. That in itself is a critique. Telling someone they're doing well is still a critique. They know they should keep enforcing that. That's not something they should forget.
So one thing for me is that sometimes I have to 80%, 20% rule. This is the one thing you have to work on, and then I can improve your whole dance. But even sometimes I have to put so many efforts, 50 times, towards just one thing. And sometimes you just have to go through it with emotions, but in being intentional to get the final thing. Have you had those moments where you've had to work really, really hard to just get this one thing? But then when you get that one thing, it's like obviously really validate.
If you've been dancing on a team for maybe like even just a year, maybe two, if you didn't necessarily work on fundamentals as much, then it's hard to change like the level of dance that you can be unless you go back to like fundamental. And I'll go to Bunga obviously because that's one style that I'm better at than others. But one thing was so Bunga I was like completely trash at freshman year, and I remember I had like no chance of getting in a segment because we had four back-to-back comps, and there was no point like getting to the point where they would switch me out for someone else who would teach me the forms. I remember one of the guys on the team, he was very nice. He wasn't a captain. He offered some newbies to come an hour before practice and help us. In a whole practice of 30 people, it's hard to spot mistakes. And if the general idea people get it, then you kind of move on if you have to, if there's no time. But he took time out of his day to help
I
me.
know.
I wasn't focusing on making it look like an L. We had mirrors to help, but it took time to make sure I'm opening my wrist more, my posture. I have scoliosis, so my posture is screwed. I hunch over a lot. One thing he would focus on was you need to feel this burn, especially if you're new to the style. If you've never done it before, it needs to burn to know you're doing it right. Otherwise, you're not doing it right. Right? For Bunga, I had to always make sure to keep my chest out, keep my shoulders back, and at any point while we're doing the choreo, it would slightly push forward again. He'd be like, no, like restart again. And then every single time, it's like slowly you keep adding another aspect and you become more aware of your body. After doing it for so long, it becomes second nature. One thing I learned, I would say I was one of the better dancers on the team, but when Vrithik joined, it was like, he's really good. How can I implement those things into my dance? It's hard because I've been doing this style for 2 years. He's doing like his double bounce is really good. He's getting low. He has the swag. How can I add that? It's hard to add fundamental elements to your dance if you've been doing it for 2 years. You got to put extra effort to improve 20% because you're already so used to this one. Like your body when it dances goes in autopilot mode half the time. It's already used to just doing what it's used to doing. You have to be intentional about getting wider or like doing anything like your stance has to be different or like really hit like that move, and comes a lot down to the intentionality that you take practice with, right? One thing, and even in a general aspect, one thing that we did senior year was, or even junior year too, but one thing we did both years was we go into practice, and at the end of practice we'd be like we'd ask the team, did we feel like this practice helped us get towards legends? If it was a bad practice, people would just be like, no, I think we had like a bad practice, we didn't really improve much. And then there's some days where I think we like genuinely made strides, fixed formation, choreo, it was cleaner, blah blah. I think if you have that intentionality about individual choreo, the set, or how the team runs practice, then you're able to see the progression rather than a week goes by and you've improved nothing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of intentionality. If I could summarize this pod, it would be intentionality, validation, and practice.
100%.
I'd love your perspective on how Talash sometimes functions well, sometimes doesn't. We've talked about how like sometimes there are long hours. Sometimes people don't necessarily feel the best during practices. I remember like how did this season you think for Texas Talash went, and also like how did it compare to previous seasons?
My first year as captain, junior year Cosmos, Adi and I didn't know what we were doing. So it was kind of just put everything to the wall, over prepare, think of every single situation possible, and it's overwhelming. And because you don't really, we've never been to Legends before. So if you don't know what it takes to go to Legends, then you're kind of just, I'm going to try to do everything I can. Maybe you're overexerting yourself and don't know until later, tired, injured, or sore. Junior year was a lot of practice hours, and we'd be like, okay, we want to get this done by 11. Doesn't get done by 11. We're there till 2. A lot of days were because the discipline's not there, maybe the organization's not there, and we've never been there before. We don't know where we need to be at this specific month of the year to be clean at comp. Like we never had that timeline done, so it's over prepare, have long practice hours. The next year we had a lot of most of the dancers returned, and a lot of the dancers at the time were also seniors. So it was like we know what it takes to get to Legends. We definitely overrated ourselves, especially because junior year we made a lot of changes every comp. It was fun. Like screw, like why not? It's more hype. Why not? We learn from those mistakes. Maybe we don't need to spend all this time changing the choreo if we don't need to. Sometimes just accept that this is good. No need to put in so much more effort of everyone of all, the entire team's time just to improve the set by like maybe 5%. So senior year was intentional about, especially in the first half or whenever we needed to be, like we're gonna be done by 11. The promise we kind of made to this team, and this is I'm gonna try to use unabove's words here, is we're gonna make a promise to you that we can get everything done and ready in time for practice. We expect you to respect our time, not talk when you don't need to talk, or not make a snarky comment after every single run through, or stay focused. If we respect each other's time, the team will prosper. There have been times when someone has to do an assignment that's due at midnight and they have to go out and practice for an hour. We'd always try to enforce these things all the time too. But if someone does have an assignment at midnight, they had a rough day, I'm not going to be like, tough luck, don't you can't submit it. Like I told them to do it, right? But we would try our best to be like, everyone else on this team is dedicating 7 to 11 to be a practice. It is your duty to be present so everyone can practice together. If random people have random assignments to random parts of the day, you're not going to have a cohesive practice and make progress. We try to be intentional with discipline and staying on time. Last year was not sustainable. There would be times when it's 11 p.m. Maybe we didn't get everything done, but it's fine. We want to respect your time, you at least, for coming here. Just because something else went wrong from one person, we're not going to necessarily hold you accountable. If one person is screwing a practice, that is going to have like negative benefits on the rest of the team. If 5 people come late, maybe like the other 30 people on the team are like, wait, I didn't come late. Why should I be punished? But the idea was like, we're all going to come together as a team. You are responsible for helping get your team members on time. You can't think, if I'm on time to practice, then I'm doing my job. That's all that matters. You need some level of accountability for other people that like, and that kind of helps if everyone's helping each other. It makes practice more cohesive. The difference between 3.0 and 4.0 year was 3.0, we didn't know what we were doing. We were doing everything we knew how. 4.0 was like, we know what it takes to get to Legends. How can we optimize our time, everyone else's time, the board members' time, learn from last year's mistakes, cut practice hours, prioritize rest, school, while still maintaining, the end goal of we still want to make it to Legends.
Yeah. I love that you said if we stop at 11 and things aren't done, that's fine. The whole team showed up and that's what we promised. A lot of teams would like to make that promise, but when it happens and you're like, but it's to the wall, that doesn't necessarily follow true because you have to get the things done. But at least for you, you're like, our team showed up and that's what we're going to do. You don't always have to rush till comp.
Yeah, 100%. Maybe the week before comp, you have that extra push, more adrenaline, more reps. But actually, 2 weeks from comp, that first week, you push, push, push. The last week before comp, your set's done. You still have things to work on, but it's not horrible. You still have a set. We prioritize rest. that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before comp, if we don't need to, we want to put ourselves in a position where by the time we're a week away, we don't have to be up until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. We can prioritize rest. I cannot function if I do not sleep. So I will. There be some times when me, Nicola, and above are like, I'm tired. Let's end practice at 11. We have things to do, but we're not, because also after a certain time, after like 11 p.m. or midnight, you're getting diminishing returns, right? You're not getting that same energy that everyone had at 7 p.m. It's best to know when to cut your losses. Obviously, make your pushes when you need to, but you don't necessarily have to do that all the time. I think sometimes if you're a captain and you're like, oh, we're not going to end until everything's done. It is on the team kind of. Maybe they're not listening. Maybe they're all like, lackadaisical. They're not focused. But I think you still have to also have to take accountability for maybe saying, hey, why did I not, as captain, not, why was I not able to help speed up the process? Why was I not able to keep things on time? I should do better. You just have to put your ego aside and be like, I'm not a perfect, I made a mistake. I'm not going to make the rest of the team suffer because I didn't figure out the forms beforehand.
Okay. One follow-up question. You're a mentor for Texas,
Yeah, we call it advisor.
advisor for 5.0. What did you see that did well, could have done better, went wrong? General summary, takeaways helpful for other teams.
The most simple answer is that they got second at Legends, so realistically speaking, they did everything right. But obviously, there's a much more complicated journey to that. I don't want to speak on their behalf too much necessarily, but I think they started the year really well, like summertime and fall time, being ahead of schedule and stuff. I think what kind of fell apart for a little bit was after the fall comp, a lot of injuries, people being sick. October, November time, it's cold. They didn't do a great job of, from that fall to winter time, keeping up the pace. It's hard to keep up. There's no comps. There's winter break. You inevitably relax a bit until comps in 2 weeks, nothing done. They had a lull period from the end of fall comp until their first spring comp. And they did have, like, I'd say a rough week before that spring comp. A lot of practice hours because they were falling behind. One thing they did well, we kept saying this to them too, because basically 4.0 year was a lot of seniors. So all of them graduated, right? Like the captain, most of the board members, dancers. So 5.0 team was in theory supposed to be like a rebuilding team in the sense that half the team is left and almost none of the current guys had much board captain leadership experience. They had to go through that learning curve, those growing pains of what it takes to be captain. We had our own insight, but I remember saying specifically, before we left as captains, we as a whole team do the whole captain's deliberations. Everyone like votes on the captains. Everyone on this team believes you, right? And like you guys were much talented dancers than at least when I started dancing. So even though I have this experience, I don't want to be in a position where I'm like micromanaging everything or like telling you exactly what to do. Inevitably, we did have 2 successful years when I was captain, but we did not place at Legends. I can help you, but don't take my advice fully because you might just end up going to the same place where I did, right? Do better, then you should add your own input and advice. We had discussions about certain segments and like where the direction of the set should go. And I was glad that we advisors had opinions, but we're not at practice all the time. We only see what's in the WhatsApp videos on stage or what we hear. Captains are in the mix of all of it with the team, the vibe. Are they stressed out? Is everyone okay? How much time is left? They have the best understanding of what needs to be done. So even though we had opinions, it'd be like I'd be like, okay, these are my thoughts, right? I kind of disagree, but these are my thoughts. This is not a command. Ultimately, believe in your heart what needs to be done. Stick by those things. There were some changes that they made that like we were like, why are they making this change? Like they don't have time for this. This is not going to work. But they pulled it off. They didn't take our advice for gospel. They heard our opinions. Maybe they said, "Screw you, we're gonna still do this anyways," and it worked, right? Like they really they like believed in their own vision, and they knew they could execute this certain idea if they wanted to. I think that's the main reason for the success. Even though they had a rough time from like the end of fall, even going into that spring comp, they after their last spring comp were like, "We don't think this set is ready to win Legends, even if it's the cleanest set in the world. We're gonna make all these changes." Right, and that's usually a huge risk to make that many changes in a month. But they believed in all those changes. The captains love those changes, production loved those changes, the team loved those changes. So even when they had all those long practice hours, they were like falling behind before Legends because they made so many changes, and they were doing all those long practice hours. All those people on the team believed in the set. I don't care if I'm here till 3. I love this set. I'll dance this set. I have faith we're going to place, and that my self belief, and they don't care about like other opinions, even ours necessarily. That helps put them in the category of placing because they're not bound to our visions or boundaries. One example is that when I was on the team for 1.0 year, we were crucified insanely for doing contempt. Like just even though after the first comp, so we had a contempt piece in our first year set, and we got critiqued on it hella. People didn't have the right technique, so it was like, okay, we're gonna work on it. We're gonna practice. This is the piece we're gonna practice the most to our next comp. Second comp, third comp, fourth comp, like every single segment, even though that was the most work, every single comp, even though that was the most worked segment, contempt was consistently critiqued. Junior year for the Masha comp, we had a segment that was like half Joomer, and then at the second half, people from the sides come and they do a little bit of like classical and not classical, like a little bit of contempt in the front. It's a weird vision. I don't know how to explain it. Like we were like, let's test the waters with contempt. The issue was technique before. We tried to have 14 guys do it on stage. What if we just have the two girls and two dudes do it, and those two dudes are good at the style?
Which set?
It was in Tamasha 3.0 year,
Oh,
Tamasha
yeah.
2022, the second to last segment. We put a few trained people and put it in, right. The judges hated that comp too. We got first, but judges hated it. It was like for my 3.0 and 4.0 year, we were like, we're gonna stray away from pointed toes as much as possible because it seems like whenever we try to do that, it's gonna fail, right? We're just gonna get critiqued for it. It's gonna be a losing segment. Like we shouldn't take that risk because if we are gonna take that risk, we need to do it properly. We need to train properly. We might not have the time for that, right? And I think that's a huge thing. I at least looked when I was like, I don't want to have contempt of the segment because we're just gonna get crucified for it. Like it felt like a lose-lose situation. What they did this year, the captains at the time that like who helped captain the infection set 5.0 year, they didn't go through that 1.0 year trauma of being consistently shat on by the judges for contempt. They were like, wait, let's just try it. Like, why? Like, it's a new dancers. We have Jay, who's one of the really talented dancers, been dancing since he was like 2. There's also girls in the team that know contempt. Let's try it. Let's train it. Let's see how it goes. And they on stage hit that segment perfectly. I mean, I don't know perfectly because technique, but that was a standout piece that impressed the judges. If they had listened to us, that segment wouldn't have been in, and they might not have placed. But because they were like, screw it, this is my perspective of what needs to be done. We're gonna take that risk. They took the risk. It paid off, and is one of the pieces that helped secure second place.
How do you think when you get to Legends, what do you change and things like that? Figure it out.
I think two of the main difference between 3.0, 4.0 year versus 5.0 year was 3.0 and 4.0 year. We kind of had a competitive spring set throughout the season, but made the wrong changes going into Legends. And what we worried about almost is trying to not follow a trend, but okay. So for example, we kind of for Cosmos year that set was kind of like structured or was trying to be very similar to OSU's set Channel Chasers, where it's like very fast paced a lead for like every a lead for different segments. There's no actual like proper storyline or like problem necessarily. It's like hype, entertaining, but it's fast paced, like short segments, fast paced. And we got a critique at Legends that said, "Oh, we added all these changes a lot because we're kind of following that method." And then at Legends, we got the critique that it's kind of too fast paced. Like we kind of took that we took that to heart too much, where it was starting to take away from certain segments in the sense that if you have so many segments in the set, then each segment's importance kind of like lowers, and you're not necessarily doing each style correctly, or if it doesn't feel as cohesive. It feels very like all over the place. And so we took that critique and we quite literally did the opposite for 4.0 year. 4.0 year, the approach was same thing. We had a really good set throughout the spring season, but we were like, okay, scrap the whole no storyline thing. We're gonna have a storyline. We're gonna have characters, a plot. We're gonna make a plot. So the sets are very different in the sense that one was like just a plan to the solar system. Here it is. Then this 4.0 year was like, okay, we're gonna create characters. Here's a plot. He's an up, down, villain, antagonist, protagonist, whatever. And we got a critique a lot during Cosmos year that we always had the energy of the hype and the entertainment factor. but not the cleanest team at the comp every single time. So we were like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're going to have a set. We're gonna believe in our segment that even though as a member on the team, we might get bored of the segment, we are gonna as a member on the team, we're gonna believe that it hits every single time. Because these judges that see it also see it for the first time, right? So they're viewing it differently. We shouldn't necessarily cloud our judgment just because we dance to the mix all the time, right? So we're gonna believe in our segment and not make as many changes, just to keep it very clean. Have a nice have a hype segment, have a hype set, and just clean throughout. Very minimal changes. Changes we should only make if something is really off. And then Legends, we made one big change with the stick segment. Didn't really work out because
Yeah.
it wasn't clean at all. People dropped sticks all over the place. It also didn't make as much sense, I think, to the audience members and stuff. So we had kind of those biases as people on the team, and as me personally as a captain of the team, that we did not we were focusing a lot on the judges' critiques almost and what other people would say more so than how we believed in the set ourselves. Like we were not necessarily taking the most holistic view of the set because when you're on the team, you're gonna get bored of segments. You're gonna not necessarily have the same view as someone else who's watching it for the first time. So even though we changed the theme very particular to the critiques that were given at Legends and like kind of took them to heart, that didn't work out. I think what 5.0 did was their changes that they made were not necessarily based on how other teams did segments. Obviously, they had some inspiration from other teams and what they did in the previous years and mistakes that they learned and stuff. But we did not do what they did, which is make the changes that you believe in, right? If you like these changes and you execute them well, they're gonna hit. You shouldn't have to worry about, oh, they might say this, they might talk about this. And I think that's kind of why we didn't place it Legends, because we were not necessarily dancing we were like dancing for the rubric too much that 4.0 year. We were like, okay, we're gonna be clean, clean, clean. We didn't add the right changes, add the more hype that we wanted to. We were trying to be very like beat the system. It didn't work out. But like for these guys last year, it did work out. For 3.0 and 4.0 year, very successful spring season and changes at Legends. For 5.0 year, rough start, like you see on Confessions. After that Minza performance, it didn't look as inspiring as previous Talaash performances. And people were like, oh, how did Talaash even place third? Whatever, that's like a different conversation. But they had a rough start, and even after some of the changes they made, people like, on the team or even outside the team were like, this story still doesn't make sense. This choreo is not hype. This is not working out. That last month, specifically the last 2 weeks before Legends, was a game changer. They went from a team that made Legends just because they got the ELO to a team that was going to compete for the top three. And I think it goes to show that like the progress throughout a set, the progress throughout a year isn't linear. Another example is Buckeye Fusion, my junior year. Their first comp was Jhalak, and I was a liaison for them. Around COVID time, a few girls had COVID, two tore their ACL, they had like hella, their roster was down to 18 people, and they had to figure it out, right? And like they got six of that comp, it didn't go well. The morale was like kind of low, but then they pulled out the next three comps, I think, like first and second, something like that. And you don't have to be a team that gets it right from the start. There is a way to pull yourself out of the gutter just because you had a bad start. I think like a team like Buckeye Fusion, they were able to pull it out. Like most teams or most people would probably call it quits after getting sixth the first comp. You know what? This is not the year. We've had hella injuries. It's been a rough season. Call it as it is. They pulled through. Similarly to last year, believing in their changes and what they did to get to Legends.
DDN is a great place to learn and a really great place to grow. Also, it has definitely caused a lot of tribulation in terms of being able to grow as a dancer. How do I see myself value as a dancer? And then like the mental health aspect, because late night practices and everything definitely takes it out of you. I was wondering if you just had similar experiences.
Touching your first point, I wanna address Confessions. Dude, that shit is the most irritating thing. I will admit I would go on Confessions after every comp to see what happens. I am that person. But I never comment or anything. Go to see what's happening. And it's so annoying because I'll see Sometimes I know when teams are putting confessions for themselves. I forget what team it was, but I remember after a comp, it was like a string of 10 confessions in a row of, oh my God, this team was so good. This team was so good. This team got robbed. This dancer is so good. I remember there's one confession. I forget what, actually, I'm going to find what the confession is right now, real quick, if you don't mind. And I'll explain why I have it saved. During my years for Talaash, Talaash was like the first and second year of being like good, and I think it's like, this is the new team, the new boys on the block. There's that hype. Let me jump on the bandwagon type thing, and other teams that have been more established, maybe Q or Origins or BSB that have done really well before, like really well. Maybe they don't do as well this year, and they get shot on completely because, oh, where's the old Q, like where did that come, and then it's just such a new group of dancers. What do you expect from them? That happens so much, and I'm grateful that during my 2 years as Delash, we didn't get many hate comments. It was a lot of love from the confessions people. It's a new team, right? Love for the new team. But this past year, Delash had a slower start. They got third at Tamasha instead of getting first or second. They got third at Minza instead of getting first or second. So many people are like, Delash fell off, Delash fell off, Delash fell off. And it was irritating because why? I just finished Gossip Girl maybe like a few months ago. I'm watching Bridgerton right now. This idea of Gossip Girl and Lady Bridgerton and like Lady Whistledown and all that stuff, it's so toxic, but it's the type of toxicity that even a normal person will attach itself to, because it's like you still want to know as a human, like what's happening, what are people saying. It's like it's this intoxicating level of toxic where like it's not going to die down unless you stop or find out who it is. I don't think anyone's going to find out who is in charge of the confessions account. That's aside. But basically, back to the point is so many hate comments about Lash falling off, and I'm being like, dude, these guys do not deserve this because it's a new team and the leadership is completely new. And there's this one confession specifically which irritated the hell out of me. It says, I forget what day it is. Let me check the date it was. I think February 27th, maybe around that time. And I think it was after the first comp when Talash didn't do that well. And one of the hate comments is, yo, how is Abhijit Harihara take a Legends team and destroy it so much, OMG? When did he even make the team Nepo ass? At least Yuvan is talented in more than one dance style. Jit's only thing is bunga, laughing emoji. I'm being so irritated because Jitty is one of the nicest people I know. He was super stressed out. So Jitty is Adi's younger brother. He got onto the team Adi's senior year, Jitty's freshman year. And first of all, Jitty's not a Nepo baby. He got on the team because he was like he's really athletic, and he was one of the better tryouts. He was already stressed about being elected captain because we kind of knew as like the team. During my senior year when he was a soft
Giddy.
Abhijit. I call him Jitty, now he's called Abhi on the team. Jitty during his sophomore year was one of the best dancers, especially in Bhangra and Kuthu. People, for the most part, kind of knew that he was going to be one of the captains, right? And I think he was stressed out about, oh my God, all the seniors are leaving, all the girls are leaving, basically start this team anew. He wasn't sure if he was going to try out for captain because he didn't want to have the pressure of failure. Or not the pressure. He didn't want all these expectations, and if they don't come, he's going to fail. He was worried about that from the start. And this confession, I remember seeing it in the morning, and like I sent it in the group chat at like 10 a.m. or something, and everyone's, what the hell is happening? They already had a rough week because of Minza, right? This is looking like a rough year for them. JD woke up at 1 p.m. He's like, yo, I just woke up. Why can't I live in peace? I was so annoyed when it comes to these things. I keep my mouth shut. Actually posting something, but I channeled my inner keyboard warrior and my inner troll and literally came up with a bunch of different, if I was to comment, a bunch of different comments a bunch of different responses to respond in the confessions. So like one of them is, Texas Delash hears your concerns loud and clear and takes these thoughts very unseriously. One is, do you even belong here? Another one is, I can tell your breath stinks. And then, so I even rated, like, there's like aggressive ones, there's subtle ones, there's passive. I was so annoyed by that. I just want to get that out there because that's the one time confessions pissed me off so much to the point where I had to channel all my anger into writing a note. I'm reading off, I read those responses off a note. It says, potential responses, don't actually post this. A list of different responses. That's just one aspect of DDN that's like pretty toxic, I'd say.
No, I have my own story. Origins. OSU Origins. There was one they were like, oh my god, OSU Origins fell off. Winning first at Legends is such a hard task because of the strain and pressure to go to Legends. Most dancers didn't continue next year. They had a new team. Going to Legends is really tough. The state of DDN right now is like where it's very like where to get to Legends takes a lot of energy and effort, and sometimes you push, and that leads to dancers not necessarily enjoying his dance as much. But like when dancers have to restart and you find another comment about, oh, you guys fell off, and it's no, they're still amazing dancers. Any dancer in the circuit is really good. Instead of appreciating our art forms, unless it's an actual critique, we just for purposes like hating each other, we do that. Like, why are we in this type of community? And
And
that
I think that's like Lost Confessions too, to be fair. I don't know if there's a Bunga version, but
there's
I don't
classic too.
classic yeah. But you don't see confessions for hip hop teams, non-brown teams. Like, why is it the brown circuit has an anonymous person posting all these ratchet ass like uncalled for? There should be a filter system. Someone needs to filter these things out. I don't know, but yeah, that's a distinct example of confessions pissing me off. Other times it's okay, not that deep, but it's just so targeted. It was like, oh yeah, this guy on the team is useless, even though I know full-heartedly that he's one of the main contributing members to why this team has succeeded and will succeed in the future. But like the toxicity and the tribulations and stuff. I think I'll say this wholeheartedly. This is 100% not filtered at all. I think DDN is absolutely not the right place to be if you want to be a better dancer. If you just want to be a better dancer, DDN's not it. DDN's still good. Several people have improved in dancing. What makes DDN really special is the community aspect of it, right? I'd label myself as introverted. I don't really put myself into new conversations with the people I don't know. But with DDNs, I know when I go to a comp that every single other person here, for the most part at least the captains or board members, all love dance to some degree. I can relate with them on that. And I think that's a lot of, in general, people have that issue when trying to make friends, a friend group, and find their purpose or identity. It's hard when you go to the first day of school, you don't know anything about these people, right? You're kind of like guessing and checking. You're kind of guessing to see, oh, does this person like the same stuff as I do? If I say I like dance, are they going to call me something? Am I going to relate with them? Or is this conversation worth it if I know they don't like the same stuff as I do? With DDN, I know almost all these people like dance to some degree, and I can relate. I know they've been grinding hours to be here. I can relate with them on that. I think that's an aspect of DDN that with the mixers that happens and the after parties and stuff that really brings, that's why it becomes kind of this like community that excels in a way, because most of the people that I know, like I mentioned, I'm very introverted, but I've met and made friends with a lot of people on other teams just on the foundation that we dance on stage together. We've seen each other's TikToks on. We've seen each other's like dance TikToks before, and like I'll find myself now like commenting on someone else's dance TikTok, killed it, even if I've met them once. You can build a connection off of that. A specific example is a dude named Athar. He is like an incredibly talented dancer. I think I think he mentioned he did classical for like training classical for 12 years, Bunga for like several years too. And like I remember once during my junior year, his freshman year, he posted a Bunga TikTok of doing like the swag Bunga piece that I choreographed. This guy is better than me, insanely crack dancer. I commented, killed it, whatever. You see more Bunga TikToks that come around, and this guy's insanely good at dancing. Last year, he asked me a few questions. He was a junior, captaining Lashkar, his second year, I believe. And he asked, how does Talaash do it? How do you guys make legends? Can you help with this theme? What do you think? He would send like some videos here and there. What do you think needs improving? And I saw him dance, made a connection with him. I don't see that as much in the hip hop circuit or other circuits. I think DDN does bring that aspect to it. That's the positive side. The negative side with DDN is, okay, so another thing about DDN as a pro is production and theme. You have dialogue, you have storytelling. It's very storytelling, just like how Bollywood is a lot of storytelling. But I think what happens is when you incorporate those elements, you take away from the complexity of dance, or all these intricate choreo or intricate formations. So you have this kind of like mishmash of, instead of like really high level dance, you have decently level production meets decent level of dance, but not high level dance. You're not going to see a DDN team perform at World of Dance and compete with hip hop teams because the level of dance is different. The prioritization is different. And I think the issue is that with DDN teams specifically, there's not exactly much training going on the fundamental level when it comes to like hip hop, classical, Bunga, whatever. I think hip hop gets done dirty the most. With classical and contempt, maybe people on the team have already done it in high school. Bunga is hype, Bunga fever. Bunga is one of the easier styles to get into. You see it a lot on TikTok. More teams are doing it in the circuit since COVID ended, and I think it's one of those styles where you see people do it. It doesn't look easy necessarily. I'm not going to say that, but there's less fundamentals to do than hip hop, for example. Less training to be done to get to a certain level, and people like it because of that. And so you see people
And at the
train for
same time, you have other teams in the same place. If you have you probably have a Bungar team, a Fusion team. You can ask the
yeah.
Bungar people, can I get some tips or something like
Yeah,
that?
exactly. With DDN, you're not necessarily learning fundamentals from the get-go. If you're a newbie, you get a little bit of fundamental training, but after the first year, you don't revisit that, right? At that point, you're just learning choreo. You can add all these critiques about angles and stuff like that, but you're not going to look good until you actually train like staying in the pocket. That's the only hip hop term I know, to be fair. But yeah, you're not going to really, if you don't train fundamentals if you train the fundamentals up to here, your choreo is gonna get up to here, no matter how much you. But if you're training fundamentals up to here, then the choreo can get up to here, right? It's good. Your choreo is never gonna look better than how your fundamentals look. And with DDN, it's we gotta be clean, clean. The dance is a team, which I think is good, but it takes individuality. In Jersey, I go to workshops now in New York City. A lot of the instructors or choreographers in the city who teach these workshops, they aren't worried if your arm is at a 45-degree angle. They don't care really. What they care is you're having fun and you add your own spice to it, right? I think that's a huge element of dance, the expressiveness, right, of dance that gets taken away when you're trying to clean a group of people, right? You're more worried about as captain that this angle is clean for the sake of the cleanliness section of the rubric rather than each dancer showing why they're so good. Are they going to add that extra little like head nod? Or are they going to add that extra little like swag to their piece? They can't do that because it takes away from the cohesiveness from the set, right? Or from the segment. And the issue is when you train constantly for one hip hop segment the entire year, congrats, you learned one hip hop segment, you're incredibly clean. In that time frame, you probably could have learned on an actual hip hop team, you could have learned like 10 segments. And maybe they're not perfectly clean. Maybe they're 80% there. But at least you learn many different moves, ways to hit moves. You like learn how to like find different variations and grooves and stuff. And if I spent for the amount of time I spent on Talaash, like I would still like, obviously I'm appreciative for the time I spent. But for the amount of time I spent on Talaash, if I had trained on like an actual team, I believe I would be much better. And I think what happens is, especially when you're an upperclassman or even as a captain, you're more worried about raising the floor of the team. You're more worried about raising the floor of the team in the sense that your priorities are help these newbies get to a certain point where they look like this. But when you're an upperclassman or a captain, you don't necessarily even have time during practice get better yourselves because you're worried about the people who just joined to get better, right? And you have to find time by yourself to improve. And you can still find ways to improve when you're an upperclassman on the team and you don't necessarily have time during practice to help yourself. And I think the trade away, like I mentioned, is the social aspect, of DDN that helps with like kind of balancing that you're not going to be a great dancer. But the point remains is that if you legitimately just care about dancing and that's it, you want to be a better dancer, DDN is not the place you should expect to kind of be that catalyst.
But I think DDN can be an intro, like
Yes, 100%. I think with hip hop teams, for most other teams to even join,
you need to be at this level.
you need some training and they'll train you more, but what DDN does really well, it takes a bunch of brown people who are just interested.
But
And
I think that's interesting when I see Texas Talaash. Like, you guys are already at this level. So the newbies level, if they're you were probably here, and probably the new entrance for Texas Talaash is here to be able to get on the team. But I think we've talked about so far that's not necessarily true. As long as you show a lot of interest, you can get on the team and you'll be brought up to that level. Is that right?
the first year we joined, the first we had the team, I think I mentioned this before. Basically, everyone on the team got in because we just need people, bro. Like, you're interested, we'll take you. Screw it. The level has definitely increased each time, almost to the point where, like, for the most recent newbie classes, all of us 1.0 guys are like, if we tried out with this class, we wouldn't sniff a spot. Like, I guess it makes sense. The bigger the team you are, the more interest you get, so you're bound to find more talent. I think another thing is also teach workshops better so people improve immediately. I think with Losh, we don't just take your dance by itself. They're like, especially because a lot of the people that try out haven't danced before, we aren't expecting you to get the choreo immediately, right? We want to see improvement from when you first walked into the workshop room to when you like try out. And we do take a lot of stock in people, or in the fact we do take a lot of stock if someone is, maybe they were like not good when they started, but they reached out to us after the workshop. Hey, like I really want to get on the team. Do you mind? Is there anyone on the team that would be willing to like spend like an hour with me, before workshops, or before tryouts, to figure out like what this move is? And like we have people on the team that are willing to do that, because I think they also understand that no one had, very few people have gone on, walked into Texas Talaash, tried out for Texas Talaash, feeling like super confident that they're going to be, one of the better people on the team. Everyone walks in with this idea of, I am pretty mid, I want to get better. And you've showed you want to get better, that's kind of really all you need. And I think DDN is the one place where it's just, even if you show mere interest, if like, you came to a workshop or interest meeting and you liked it, you have a chance. I don't think that's necessarily true for other hip hop teams where it's, here's a threshold that you have to be at. It's more,
I agree. I think there are parts that you mentioned about being able to grow as a dancer and stuff like that, but at least I had this vision that it's going to be the evolution of the next dance team. If you focus on fundamentals, you could do a new piece because you work on a segment the whole season. Some hip hop teams, they practice the fundamentals so many times. They're like, if they needed to learn a new chord, they could, just like that, in 1 hour. They can change a whole set, but that's not true for DDN teams. We never practice fundamentals to that degree. Changing a set would take multiple hours, so many years. Do you think that could be like the evolution of the next DDN team, of like a DDN team that takes time to teach all the fundamentals, takes time to learn other choreo, takes time to just teach everyone at a higher level? Could that be more sustainable? Doing hard things to make life easier.
Yes, that's the perfect point to what you said. I think similar to the meditation stuff I mentioned, or the like the wellness exercises that I mentioned earlier, it's very easy to just be like, no, let's just do a run through. Let's just do the run through. Like this is a waste of time. But it's like taking one step back to take three steps forward. You're investing the time to work on something that maybe not is presently going to help you, but will make things better for the future, make things faster. Something as simple as like, we tried to enforce this and even like it didn't work out as well. But this year they're trying to enforce it. Dancing is an extremely athletic thing, especially for that long. The people who improve quicker or improve the quickest, A, use their brain, but B, are also athletic enough to be able to do these moves. They're like, if someone's like really strong, they can hit those strong moves really well. But that it would take less time for them to do that than someone who like, isn't necessarily as athletic. Going to the gym is hard during the school year with practice, but something as simple as stretching properly before practice and after is going to save your body from so much pain like later on and soreness. It's easy to just be like, oh, you know what, we got to practice, let's just do a run through, rush through everything, blah blah blah. But instead, if you take half an hour to stretch properly, you're then going to come out of that practice, maybe lost half an hour of time of dancing, but you're going to have made more progress because you prepared your body, right? So similar to what you were saying about the fundamentals, for us it was like we trained a lot of my 2 years, we trained a lot of bunga fundamentals, and that way it made it easier to switch choreo and change stuff and things like that. We made the mistake of not training hip hop fundamentals as much, and as a result we weren't able to switch hip hop choreo. This last year's Talash group did was they not only prioritized bunga fundamentals, but also hip hop fundamentals, so that when they did have to come to a point where they changed a lot of the choreo for Legends set, they were able to do it with much less friction than had they not done the fundamentals. And it's like, oh, here's a new set, I don't know how to do any moves. If teams want to be flexible and be able to make changes malleably and not pigeonhole yourself into a certain segment that you've cleaned for so long, you will find that you can almost swap in and out segments like in a week or two with so much more ease if you take the time in the beginning to focus on like the fundamental part.
Sustainability is hard work. It's not easy to do all the forms, have a team that cares for every single second in practice. It's not easy to build those things. The easier thing to do is just run, run, run. You think you're going to improve by Legends or by the next comp, by the big comp, by any comp. But if you take a step back, do the things that help your team, really building that sustainability aspect, not the oh, we're putting on the best performance, we're putting on this. Just we're creating the best team we can do as function as a people. That makes a better team.
I think that also applies to an individual level. Like I mentioned, my last 2 years for captain, I can't really find time to clean myself because I'm cleaning other people. And I'd say the only, like I improved as a dancer because the standard increases as the team gets more competitive. But I'd say the thing I improved the most was energy, like stamina, insane stamina. Dancing for 10 minutes on stage, ridiculous, right? I think I also, to be fair, I worked on my stage, but the only time I was able to work on my stage presence was when I wasn't at practice, right? Or like when I was not worrying about being clean. I was just worrying about being expressive. I think that's why I like my performance a lot during my senior year because I didn't really prioritize cleaning for myself necessarily. As a lead, you don't necessarily need to be clean. It matters more about stage presence. Even when I go to bunga workshops now, I'm more worried about the fundamentals and the simpler things you forget at a DDN practice. It's more about the expressive side of things. Even now, I work more on now I have dog shit stamina, right? Like I cannot do like more than maybe like a segment right now without needing water. Now I'm more purposeful with how I want this move to look. Or even simple bunga legs. If I keep doing the same thing without really knowing what I'm doing, then I'm not going to improve. I'm only going to improve and make it easier for myself in the future if I kind of instill that fundamental aspect now. Otherwise, I'm going to end up looking the same, just doing different choreo. I can only actually improve as a dancer if I improve the fundamental part of it.
Yeah. And one thing I just wanted to lastly mention is that even as a captain and classman, do you think you've improved by being able to pay attention to the details that underclassmen should focus on? Because at least for me, when I'm like, oh, I'm critiquing others, I'm like, I'm helping other people improve, I've also improved a little bit by being able to pay attention to, oh, this is how I can teach someone else, and this is how I teach myself too.
100%. I think one thing for me is that one way I tell people, not tell people, but one way I advise people to improve is to watch your own videos and see what needs to be fixed. But it's the same concept I said before about you only. It's a weird inflection of what I said before about you only know if you like ask. Is when you the way I've gotten better is I've watched other people dance and see how I can like apply that. If I see someone that looks good on YouTube or on stage, I'm like, they do that move really well. I want to be able to do that. I want to try to replicate someone that has like my build type. I think that's one thing that's kind of like not mentioned when becoming better as a dancer. I'm 5'8", like 130 pounds. I can't watch someone who is 6 foot, 180 pounds and learn how to dance like them because I inevitably am not going to look like them. But if I see a dancer with a similar build style to me, like my similar height, like my issue would be because I'm a smaller person, how can I dance in a bigger space? How can I dance to look bigger? And if I can watch someone who does that well, I think some issues taller people have is if you're 6'2" and
I'm not 6 foot two, but tall.
if you're like pretty tall, I don't think you're going to benefit much from watching someone shorter dance. You're going to benefit from someone who is tall, who might, because if you're taller and you're new to dancing, you might seem lanky, your arms are a bit flaily, and that's because you have more of your body to control than a smaller person. So if you're able to watch like a taller person who does have really good control of their body, just watch them a bunch, see how they do it. How are they able to keep control of their body, even if they're like really tall? I think that's one thing. Like finding people that kind of have a similar build to you and how you watch their videos and how you can improve from them. Back to what you said about like attention to detail. I think like I mentioned before, when I first started dancing, I didn't use my brain. And then once I became captain, it's like, okay, I kind of have to use my brain and like my eyes. Even as a captain, I've always watched performances very much on the entertainment side. I'm not looking at it like, oh, I just enjoy performances that I watch. I don't try to critique it too much because I just want to like I don't want to shit on everything that I see. I want to like enjoy this rather than hate this. Being captain is like when you're seeing people when you're trying to clean people, you kind of have that you kind of grow extra eye for details, and that helps your awareness as a dancer. Oh, I need to be aware about this angle or like how I look for this. You're only going to get that really, I think, if you watch other people dance. You're not going to get much if you just yourself.
For sure. Yeah, I wanted to transition our conversation into the mental health aspect of DDN. How was that journey for you? Was it all sunshine and rainbows all 4 years?
Oh boy, I actually don't know what popular belief is, but for me, for my captains, like my aspect is like someone that's been on Talaash. Talaash is definitely one of the, if not the best thing that's ever happened to me, but it is also arguably the most detrimental thing that could have happened to me. but it's like one of those things where I would also not trade it for the world. But I am someone that does the very. I'm someone that would like love to have two save files in my life. And so, oh, what happened if I didn't do Talaash? What happens if I did do Talaash? Sorry, what happens if I didn't do Talaash? What happens if I did do Talaash? I'd say like one easy pro for Talaash is the community aspect of it. You make a lot of friends. Well, not just in general, make a lot of friends. You get better at dancing. You know, everyone kind of knows that. I think the detrimental side is you do, especially that first year maybe is a huge learning curve, especially if you're on a team that is super competitive and does those practice hours. You're missing out on, you know, maybe like a party with your friends or like hanging out with your friends. You know, the you're not eating maybe necessarily as a healthy schedule would maybe require you to wake up at this time, sleep at this time, eat at this time, go to the gym at this time. Most people, I would say, unless you like really, really, really have your shit together, do not consistently on a dance team and able to eat, sleep properly, or at, you know, a steady interval.
To Chalka, which I will figure out later, unless you're good to Chalka.
Chelka is an example of a team where they are extremely disciplined and they are able to. I actually don't know that many people, but I remember talking to them. They practice 6 to 9 hours a week. Teams need to like do what they do, honestly.
Back to our conversation.
Yeah, with the Lodge, that first year, we didn't know what we were doing for Legends. It was just anything at the wall, over prepare, all that stuff. My first semester, I was really anxious because I didn't know if I had the authority to do what I wanted. It took me a while to realize that these guys have faith in me. I just need to have faith in myself. It was really good because I gained a lot of confidence from being on the team, having a position of authority, being in a position for a few years where like people like listen to you will inevitably help your confidence when it comes to deciding other things. I think I mentioned this before too. I was a huge procrastinator beforehand. Now I'm like a huge type A person, like planning everything. Back to like why I would argue it's been detrimental. I think it. I think the stress of having. I think the stress of having multiple people trust you to do and deliver on this certain project or this choreo is also just a lot to handle. And it's not like I mentioned, it's not like you're a CEO and you have all these years of experience and that's your job. And well, for example, Cheer is like this Netflix show with like 2 seasons. It follows basically
He's a Netflix binger or show binger.
it follows like this journey of a cheerleading team, and those guys are really brutal, right? Cheerleading is obviously like an extremely athletic sport. If you're a dude, you got to be able to throw girls left and right. If you're a girl, you got to be able to do 6 flips in a row. It's like really painful on your body. But people do that because they're doing that because that's like their passion, and almost maybe they're going to that for their career. Like they're trying to find like, some level of career in that. And the coach has been coaching for multiple years, just like any sports coach. The issue with DDN is that I'm a student. I'm not a dance teacher. Like my job is not a dance teacher. This is like an exec board position. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not getting, you know, I'm not getting sponsors from this. And same with the team. The team members, this is a club at the end of the day. No one on the team is aspiring to be a future dancer. They have their own majors, you know, ECE, CS, pre-med, they have their academic aspirations. You find that difficult balance where it's I love dance, but I need to prioritize like my education. Like we'd have this running joke, and I assume most teams do, where it's I'm like part-time student, full-time Dalash dancer. Freshman year, first semester, complete best. Second semester, horrible practice hours. My schedule practice 7 p.m. till 2 a.m. Homework 2 a.m. till 5 a.m. Sleep at 6 a.m. Wake up at noon. Go to class 12 to 3, 3 to 5. Do some homework or like you know chill. 5 to 6. Once I became captain, it's like my priorities and time related to the Lodge is not just practice time. It is all encompassing. It's not even like you're a full-time Lodge student. It's more like you're a medical. I don't okay. It's not like it's obviously like I'm not going to compare it to that necessarily, but it's in the same idea where it's you're on call on for
I think being a captain of a DDN team is harder than being a pre-med.
my girlfriend's mad at me, but it's the idea of being
I'll say it.
the idea of being on call and always having at least this is how I perceived it. Other people are probably just better at being able to handle those situations easier than I was. This was kind of like a like transition phase of my personality and like how I deal with things. That's one. But also I would always feel overwhelmed all the time. And a few examples of that is there like we had obviously a very successful season twice, but obviously a lot of issues came up here and there, and some issues would be like kind of general. Some issues would be like something as simple. So we'd always have we would have a group chat with every single person on the team and the other captain. So like 4.0, it would be like me, Nikhil, and above another person. But we'd have 30 of them for 30 different people. Plus you have the production, the logistics group chat, the finance group chat, the caps and girls group chat, the caps and advisors group chat. You have random group chats. All of the board ones get used all the time because people are always mentioning something different, always something different to check up on. And then there's also ones with like just individual people. And it's okay, one person comes and says, oh, I can come to practice today because of blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. Another person says something else. Another person says something else. Trying to like maintain, okay, wait, we're missing 5 people. How to optimize practice? How do you make sure that, how do you make sure that we're on schedule for things still? And on a more not depressive note, but on a deeper note, we sometimes have conversations with people who weren't necessarily happy with how they were doing on the team, whether it's like they practiced really, really hard and they're kind of feeling estranged from the team because they're not in as many segments. They don't feel themselves improving. They feel like they might want to quit. Some angry with decisions we've made. Me and Nikhil lived in the same building, and like Nikhil was also just like across, like on the same floor. Sometimes after practice, we get this long ass message from someone. I just walk to Nikhil's room and be like, "Dude, read your phone," and he'd be like, "I know," and we sit there and be like, "Dude, we fucked up," and it's just so sad because like you obviously friends with all these people, but so you're obviously friends with all these people, but you don't want to let them down and you want everyone involved. And I would say I'm not a huge people pleaser, but I'm definitely someone that does not like to be in the environment of, oh, I did something that caused you to feel this certain bad way. I would like to amend it in some way. I'm not going to necessarily put you in the piece because you're sad about it, but I want to find common ground. Even in my relationships and friendships, I don't want to go to bed mad. I'm the type of person that cannot sleep until this reaches some sort of resolution.
So an opportunity to like, okay, go the next day, this ability will be resolved. This problem will
Yeah,
be resolved.
there's some direction that thing can go in a positive way.
Getting these texts at 2 a.m. is rough because you're probably like, I want to sleep, but nope, I'm gonna stay up 2 hours
Yeah.
to figure this out.
Some days I remember where I just don't have the mood to do anything that day. Go out with my friends, hang out with them, because I just want to brain rot in my bed, just lie down, because I feel like I just let people down. And I think, like I mentioned, different people have different ways of processing that. I'm not going to say I'm like a huge empath. Is that the word? Sympath, whatever it is. I'm not someone that is a huge empath. I don't want to run a hardcore company where it's like, oh, you don't like my decision? Tough, right? Obviously there are some times when it's like there have been some times where it's I am going to stand by what I said. We can try to solve something. I'm going to stand by what I said, and that's something I have to learn more later. Where it's I can't people please everyone. Stand by what you said, and people will get over it. People will see if someone's not in a segment they worked really hard for, and they're like kind of like shitting about it. Then I will sometimes just tell them, like, not tell them, but I will understand that this is a hard decision that had to be made in the present that will pay off in the future. There's a reason we made this decision. The captains are the mix of everything. They should have the best judgment about what should be done. There's a level of transparency that needs to be had with everyone. I do want to have those conversations all the time. I feel the onus is on me to make this conversation transparent, to make it like, I apologize for this. I take accountability for this. Let's see how we can work on this. You're just another 20-year-old trying to dictate, but you're in charge of decisions. It does get a lot. Another point, I definitely spent more. Okay, so one of my roommate, his name is Sid, not on Talaash. It's not really a good, like, not a dance on the team. And we're like best friends, roommates also. I barely saw him freshman year because it'd be like I go to practice 7 a.m., come back late, he's sleeping. And by the time I wake up, he's gone. I didn't do a good job making time outside of practice to see my friends all the time as much as I would have liked to. And to be fair, they're all my friends are super supportive. Yo, like Dalash, like once they saw like Dalash was really like Dalash went from a team that no one knew to a team that was placing. They came to my comps. I remember a bunch of my friends flew to Chicago to come see me dance. I was like, dude, that's like the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. Because I think that's very few people that would do that. Glosh sometimes took so much of a portion of my brain that I wasn't able to necessarily make connections as many connections and memories with other people as I would have liked to. And I would admit that a lot of that is in my head, like that stress, but it is kind of hard to navigate around it. And then
No,
you're kind of in this pigeonhole where this has to be successful because I sacrificed so much time. And it's that loop, that negative feedback loop of I need to make this work to make it worth it, but to make it worth it, I need to grind harder. And then you're kind of in this cycle where it's like you don't know what to do.
it's crazy because you have to take a step back, but that step has so much inertia to resolve. What if I just don't care about placing? What if I just don't care about this and choose to engage with dance in a different manner, live your life in a different manner? And I honestly think like sometimes that can lead to better results, but it just feels counterintuitive. And you're like, what if I don't care about placing, but I just care about the best performance? What type of dance would that create? I remember one of my best friends, Amish at UVA, he was like, what if you attended a comp and you didn't know placings? Would you still dance? And I was like, yeah, of course, I'd love dance. I think that's like sometimes with things we lose within DDN of like that placing. Of like we're doing this to make sure we're competitive, make sure we're doing all of this, blah blah, but we forget the reason we started.
Those last 2 years, we went to Legends. We didn't place. I remember performing and watching the video back, being like, honestly, I'm just glad I danced my best. I'm just glad. To hell with, at least for now, all the adrenaline's kicking in. Maybe I will care about the placings once we get to the point where they're about to announce it. But from right now up until that moment, I don't care about placing. I'm so glad that I have a performance that I can look and show my friends and be able to be, oh wait, I did this. This looks sick. Moments like that. I don't think anyone on the team ever walks. I don't think we've ever walked off of stage being like, that was horrible. I think that this isn't one time. This is a random side story, but I usually have a good performance on stage. I don't make so many mistakes. Nusha, my Cosmos year, was the one comp where I had so many mistakes. I'm almost positive it's because I was worried about placings because that was a comp where it was like Lux was there, Aftar was there, I think Chicago Ada was there, a lot of talented teams, and to get to Legends, we had to place top two to confirm Legends. That's the only time I ever thought about the Tamasha was like literally our best performance ever that year. We had no expectations of placing. We were just like we just want to maybe we can get a fourth for the first time. That'll be like the best we've ever done. You know, but we just want to have a really good performance, and it paid off. We got first best. That was our best run through we've ever done. Adrian actually too was like, oh, we're all in Dallas. Like a lot of our family friends, a lot of family friends are here for spring comp. Let's have fun. Nusha was the last. There's a comp in between. I'm trying to forget which one it was. Remember which one it was. But Nusha was the one comp where it was we needed a top two placing to confirm Legends. And that comp, I remember during the part, like during the one part where I'm in the middle and front for the own my segment that I choreoed, I forgot it and did the wrong legs. Like I was going right and left, everyone else was going left and right. A few
I'm gonna put that
counts.
up. I'm gonna put that
There's
up.
there's like a whole blooper on this. There's a part where this is the less of a blooper where it's a formation where it's you go through the tunnels, but like I messed up the form and end up going through like the wrong pathway. There's another part where during Goosebumps actually, right before Goosebumps starts, there's like a thunder sound and it's supposed to be chaos, everyone running around. For some reason, I trip and fall onto stage, which is fine. It's supposed to be chaotic. But then one of the other guys, Manus, also falls on me. I'm pancaked on the floor for a split second. So much went wrong with that comp, and that was the only time I've ever actually been super duper. Like that was the first time I was super stressed about competing and placing. I guess the effects were negative because I was thinking so much about it. There's a saying: if you're skiing down a slope and thinking, "Don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the trees," all you're gonna do is hit the trees because that's all you're thinking about. But if you're skiing down a slope and you're saying, "Focus on the path, focus on the path, focus on the path," all you're thinking about is the path, right? And you'll get through it. Similarly, if you're dancing and thinking into place, then you might not necessarily you're thinking about all the negative obstacles that could come in your way. What if this happens? What if this happens? But if you go into a performance being like at least the 2 days beforehand, being like, I just want to have the best performance I've ever had, like ever. Like I just want to enjoy myself. Then you're probably more likely to have that performance that you like really wanted.
I got the inspirational quote he sent. Let's go. I think captains never get the shot off their minds, but even dancers, we do get a shot off our minds, but we still live within a smaller portion of what we could do outside of dance. I remember like when we had the 40-hour week practices, I would wake up 11, I'll wake up at 9, put the phone alarm, and be like, am I going to class? I don't go to class. I just skip all my class for the day and just, I need to sleep. It applies to everyone on the dance team, that ability to just not be as productive, not be as like present outside of your life. But I'm sure with captains, it's just that extra. And I'm really glad you said all of that because with the captains, it's that extra feeling of I'm responsible for all of these other people. So that's why my brain can never shut off. I think the best leadership style is no captains. Everyone chooses to figure out what's the best way we can create this better production, what's the best way we can teach better choreo. Everyone's cleaning each other. If you could create a team that does that and cares about each other and cares about the whole team, that would be a team that doesn't have to work as hard.
Yeah, the issue with being a captain, I guess this is kind of an issue. If you're the type of person that does need to do things immediately, as soon as you get the message that the mix is delayed, you're instantly thinking about how do I fix that, right? There are other types of people who can put their phone away for the night. They look at it tomorrow. We'll figure something out. Maybe they're a little more laid back. But I'm a relatively anxious person. If there's a problem, fix it. Gotta find a solution. I remember there was a time I counted this. I was with one of my friends, Bhavana, and I counted how many group chats or messages I had opened or responded to in the last 24 hours. It was 35. And like, to be fair, some of them are like just like one message, like two text conversations, something like, oh, I can't come to practice today. Some are like maybe a little bit more detailed conversations about what's going to happen with production. Another one's going to be a little more detail about changes for the dialogue. If you're the type of person that is super anxious, you're going to always feel like it needs to be solved immediately. Otherwise, the world's going to end. Or at the very least, everything's delayed and you don't want to be delayed because time's of the essence and you need to rush and rush and rush. And you have to find balance and peace with yourself. I genuinely don't think you can find peace while being captain. You can try, but the pressure's going to be there. You need to, ideally, you're already in that peace of mind. Sure, you need urgency so you're not falling behind. I remember my first months as captain, my second year, and it was me, Nicola, and Anubhav, and it'd be like us three get on a call to figure out something, right? And we would figure it out and we talk a little bit more, something else. Then one of them would be like, "Oh, so we're done, right?" And then I'd be like, "Nope, we have this to do." And they'd be like, "Oh shit, we're screwed," because there's so many things to think about. I think I helped bring that level of urgency to make sure we are prepared for those moments. But I also brought tension and anxiety. Someone more laid back, which is not me, would come to these calls and be like, "Okay, we'll make this list. We'll find time to address it later." I think the issue I always had was like it's always going to keep getting pushed inevitably, and trying to balance everyone's schedules. Nikhil was applying for med school. Other people have doing 12-hour work shifts maybe or something. Everyone has like a different schedule when it comes to work. There are other priorities, there are other plans and hangouts. So it's always like we need to find the earliest time to work on this. That causes stress because then someone has to move something, rush from a meeting to get here. They have to leave early, and I think to have that level of level-headedness is really important to navigate the team better.
I have two questions with respect to your time. One reason I really wanted to have your conversation today, like earlier in the season, is because odd-wids are coming up. And I was wondering if you had any advice for teams about what to do at odd-wids in terms of like choreo, thinking about how to fix mistakes, but also like including newbies and other things like that. What would be your biggest 3 tips for odd-wids that wouldn't be
Okay.
general? Of wear black and make sure your team is not there. School logo
Okay,
is
yeah.
not there.
The first one is try your best or try harder to include your newbies. One issue we had my junior year, which created more problems, like a lot more problems later on, was that we did start the season very early in the sense that we were prepared over the summer, ready to do fall auditions. Fall comp was so early. It was like, oh, we don't really have time to take a step back, right? So we can training these newbies will take time to get to a certain point where they are ready for the audition video. And you would think that, oh, we already have this segment that's like basically choreoed, most of the team can do it. Why would I waste time to teach the newbies? Why would I waste so much more time to teach the newbies unless they're already really good, which is usually not the case, to be in the piece, right? Like why would I waste time when I have like a schedule to get to? The issue was newbies training outside by themselves all the time, and the people on the inside of the room practicing, being clean, and you create that disconnect between the newbies and the rest of the team. They don't feel as involved. They're coming to practice at the same time as everyone else, but they're training something completely different. They don't feel a part of the team. They're not a part of that, the same group of boys that is there every single day. So to avoid that, you do need to do your best to connect the newbies with the team outside of just like social aspect. So when you have these newbies, maybe even if it's just like one segment, something simple, I'd say that Kutu is probably the easiest for a newbie to learn. There's no fundamentals necessarily compared to Bhangra or hip hop. Even if it is at the detriment of the team slightly, like in terms of cleanliness, 99% of the time, they will figure it out. So I think the main thing to emphasize from the beginning is togetherness. When you have an established group of 20 people, it's daunting for 5 new people and each of them individually feel connected with the rest of the team. And the best way to do that is through the audition video when you're grinding all those hours, because otherwise they're not going to feel like they're improving, right? The audition video prep of the season still does take some level of, is some like maybe 10% of the season's length. By not putting them in, you're stunting their growth and improving. You're like putting everyone, let's say this at the newbie level, this is where everyone else is. By not putting the newbies in the audition video and not giving them an opportunity to grow, you're leaving them here and pushing everyone else up here. And you create this gap where by the end of maybe by during spring season, it's, oh, these newbies can't do anything. But that's because you didn't give them the motivation from the start. So I'd say it's worth taking the risk of, you don't have to put them in all the pieces, but it's worth taking the risk of putting them in one segment. It helps team morale. We talked earlier about taking that step back to make the season smoother. A second thing, let me think.
When do you think about choreo for Oddvids, and when is it done, and when do you teach? Because obviously it's so early in the season that you can't teach fundamentals while
Mhm.
doing Oddvid choreo at the same time, technically.
I think this is where Texas has the advantage compared to other teams.
You guys start early.
Ideating starts a little bit earlier, and I think that's just because we started that from my junior year, so it's like kind of just been like a trend. But I think another kind of like life hack, not life hack, kind of hack, is that even for winter break, we won't have practices like every single day or something, but it'll be like even over winter break and similar with summer break. Okay, once a week, maybe we'll all the Dallas people meet up in Dallas somewhere to learn this choreo, and then the Houston people, and then the Austin people. So it's like little like boroughs of Texas where like you can kind of meet up and at least catch up on something, learn together. Texas has, because like, I know Cali teams with they start school kind of late. Any teams with the quarterly system like Drexel or UMich, they're like kind of screwed because school starts so late, like September 21st or something. Texas and like down south starts like beginning of August, not beginning of August, like middle of August. We have a boot camp the day before. But what we usually do is we have like 3 to 4 days of boot camp the day before the school starts, which is like 10 to 6 of getting every like all we're gonna go over the choreo again for like Banga and Kutu. We're gonna do tryouts, do forms, and then ideally by the end of boot camp, or maybe like a week in, you have form for your AVs done. Most teams don't get that luxury. But yeah, so I don't really know how to answer that question given other school situations.
How do you think about choreo and form? That's one question I wanted to ask, which I guess can be part of this question is, do you do formations first, then choreo first, formations? How do those two interrelate? And like, how do you think about these types of things? Like, how does the process come together?
I think it depends per person. Different people have their own vision. But I think what usually sparks the idea part is, oh, I want to have this really cool formation here. And what we would do with Bunga, kind of, at least, and I think it applies to most styles. I think all styles, to be fair, is like we've gotten critiques where it's like everything's wow all the time, right? When everything's wow all the time, simultaneously nothing is wow. You're not highlighting moments, like you're not highlighting the moments the way it needs to be highlighted. There's no ups and downs. One thing we've learned is when you think of the mix, think of one or two cool ideas you want to incorporate and then build around that drop. Make that drop super hype, super clean, whatever it is, and build around it. So around that you have simpler choreo, maybe filler stuff. Maybe you want to get maybe it's the 20th section you have this formation, and at the 40th section, the 40th second of the mix, you have this formation you want to hit. Everything in the middle does not necessarily need to also be super hype. You just need to find a way to make that pathway like seamless and to make that pathway seamless. And I think you definitely do not necessarily want a choreo from beginning to the end, because you're gonna end up pigeonholing yourself. Like I find myself when I first was making forms, is, oh, I'm here, I'm at this formation, but now I'm stuck because there's not many places I can go from here. Whereas if you kind of highlight, okay, 1, 2 sections of the mix that I want this and this to happen, then you kind of know where to bridge it together, rather than like being here at one spot and then forcing yourself in a direction that you didn't want to be in because you wanted to be somewhere else. In terms of choreo and formations, I think of the formations more so if I have any cool ideas for like pathways of formations, not necessarily 1 and 2, but like how to get from 1 and 2, I prioritize that. And the choreo doesn't need to be complex. You want the formation to hit. You need to listen to the choreo and know, for example, if it's a Punjabi song, like on the beat, making sure you hit this legwork. If it's a hip hop song, you have this trill in the mix, or like this, bass beat. You want to be able to hit those parts, and then you can kind of like navigate around that. But I think it's mostly just about highlighting maybe 2 or 3 sections of that mix and making that the moment, and not necessarily giving everything else in the same level of importance.
Got it. It's not necessarily, at least when I've started choreo, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to this one thing and start from beginning to end. It's more, okay, what moments do I want to create within this 1 minute? How can I help everything else revolve around those
Yeah,
moments? It's kind of like creativity happens from building on top of things instead of going from a black hole.
100%.
Got it. Creativity builds on stuff. But then the last thing is like for newer teams, people who have not started from like previous teams that expanded or have amazing girls who are a good resource. What would you recommend to grow and as a way to get better choreo and as a way to improve? Because I think a lot of teams struggle with they form and then they kind of stay at non-bid comp level the whole time. And not that that's a bad thing in any manner because bid comps are their own stressful thing, but like how do you grow in terms of like the storytelling? How do you grow into formations? How do you improve over the years?
You need to recruit 4 talented girls, but I think you do need to make the most of the resources surrounding you. And maybe there's not necessarily resources like in your school, but it could be anything as simple as learning how to lead a team. For example, DSD, Dirty South Dandia, like the Texas Ross team, incredibly talented, and they are literally the Tom Brady of the Ross circuit, and they practice 9 hours a week. They cap it 9 hours a week. They have rules like no phone during practice. It's very specific water breaks. No, like, the culture is already there, but there's no talking, no fooling around. We're here to like practice and be efficient and go win the comps, right? Something as simple as that. With one of the captains Anubhav, he just sat in on DSD practice for like half an hour. Was able to witness like how they were doing practice, just like watching, and he was able to learn so much from that. And we were able to be able to figure out, okay, how to use that information to help our team. So that's from like a leadership and holistic perspective. Or even like dance, there's always going to be someone in the circuit that is graduated or an alum that is willing to help in some degree, maybe choreo a segment for you, maybe give some insight on what this dialogue or like what the production is. And I think if you're able to just use your resources as much as you can, then you're maximizing your team's potential because you're not pigeonholing yourself into just yourself. Right? I remember one thing we did for, I think it was my second year. Yes, my second year. We reached out to BSB over Instagram, and BSB obviously had been a team for, I don't know, like 20 years or something. They've gone to Legends, placed at Legends before, and we asked them, what do y'all do for AVs? They gave some simple advice. AVs is about being clean, be hype. You don't complicate it. Keep the choreo clean, have hype moments, but don't complicate the choreo. Formations should be intricate but not complex. Wait, no, like they should be intricate, but you shouldn't have to worry about this
Someone hitting
in an
it.
AV. You would worry about cleanliness on a stage
Oh
in the
yeah.
sense that you might not know if it's gonna hit. Simple advice like that. Like the Losh, it was literally like no one knew what the Losh was at that point, but they were nice enough to like respond to our Instagram DM. I think if you do that with
Guys, go tell BSB, DM BSB, flood their comments.
I
Be the
think
first one.
it's interesting now because we've reached out to so many judges and teams before we were like really anything. During my senior year, we'd have some other teams message us, how do you guys do this? It creates a cycle. We used to be like someone that didn't know what they were doing. And we asked someone. Then we got to a certain point. Now people ask us. There's always that cycle that's open for people if you're able to take that leap. And yeah, like I mentioned, I think it's about maximizing your resources, making that worth it. We joke that the Talaash is not even okay. Like the Talaash is, how do I explain this? we're like the leftovers. It sounds like a weird word to use, but we're like different assortments of different teams. The founders of Talaash used to be on Sire and TXB. Two of the girls on Talaash danced for Nuts Ballet their first year. One of the other girls danced for RDC her freshman year. One of the other girls came from UTSA and was on their all girls team. A bunch of the other guys on the team also came from other teams after leaving their team first year. Vrutik came from Detroit and he danced with us. And we've literally just been, I think we've just been really good at using other people's knowledge to our advantage. How can we see to adapt to ourselves and being open with any criticism, any critiques, anything we can do better. And you can only get that criticism or that feedback if you ask.
That's a good point. I know one thing you've got done graduating from Texas Talash is doing your own workshops. It's scary to put yourself out there. I was wondering what that process looked like. How much did you have to hype yourself up to be like, I'm doing this? How has it been so far?
At first, it was kind of shaky. I'm not gonna lie, because there's some like logistical issues with doing workshops. One is that I live in Jersey. Jersey is close to New York, but also not because it's like drive to the station, take an hour train, then take a subway to the studio, 2 hours total. Going to New York and back on the same day after like work, for example, and then you've worked the next day. It's not exactly a you waste like 4 hours being in a train or subway or walking, and it gets tiring. I've been wanting to do this for a while, especially because going from being the lodge captain and dancing 40, 50 hours a week to living in Jersey, where all my friends are down south, you miss that aspect of college that you love so much. So I wanted to teach workshops, but because there was logistical issues, and the other issue was kind of starting off, because when you start off, like when you start anything, it's usually the first hard step. It's like taking that leap of faith. Start anything, like literally anything.
100%.
You have to hype yourself up. People have been really nice to me over the past 2 years. Even people I don't really know, but they like say they meet me at like AP, or like they see me in New York. Dude, you killed it as like that lead. You killed it as Remus. You killed it as Pluto. Love the set. I like feel good about myself, right? I try to keep it like down. It legitimately brightens my day. But then I sometimes would go to there's like this thing called MBS, Manhattan Bunga Squad. It's not a dance team. It's a bunch of people in New York. It's like an account for it. Someone will like volunteer to teach this piece. So like someone that runs the account is like, hey, we're doing like an MBS session on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. at this studio, and then someone's gonna come in. Like not like someone who volunteered is gonna come teach the segment. No one's making money off of it either. Like everyone pays to cover the studio cost, which
Yeah.
is even cheaper than a workshop, right? It's not a consistent choreographer each time. They're usually teaching a segment of previous year's Bunga team. They're just volunteering. Everyone is just the people just want to dance in New York. The problem is that some of those people at workshops or sessions are really talented Bunga dancers. They've done Bunga for 3, 4 years in college. I'm like in the fusion circuit in the upper echelon. But when I see these dudes are picking up choreo and looking stage ready in 30 minutes. Because like everyone only teaches for like an hour or two. It's not even a two. Normally workshops are 2 hours. This is they book out a room for 2 hours, but they teach two segments. So you only have 1 hour to learn it, and you kind of go like pretty fast paced. So if you haven't had Bunga experience at all, you're definitely going to struggle. With the Manhattan Bunga squad, there's a lot of trained Bunga dancers that come to dance around, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know, like these guys should be the ones teaching. Like why the hell do I think I can teach? Luckily, I met one of the guys on there's an alumni dance team for DDN. There's Abhi from UMich. He danced on Manzat on other teams. He lives in New York, and he's also. I remember talking to him, and he was like, "I'd low key also just want to teach dance. Like, I think it'd be fun." And I think with both of us together, we were like, we both had the willpower, but a lot of the willpower also came with fear and that initial push we didn't have. But we both were like, you know what, screw it, we're gonna do it, right? And we came up with our first segment. We taught it, super hype. It was like last month, I think. So now it's good because I think it was so difficult to just do it by ourselves because not only is there the aspect of the workshop itself with the choreo, there comes like the Instagram account, making the post, the captions, the flyer, making sure people come, like how many people can you get to come. You don't want to be texting your friends every day like can you come. The good thing was we went to different schools and had different friends in the city. He could bring his crowd, I could bring my friends, and I'm also meeting new people and he's meeting new people while still feeling comfortable in like my own group, if that makes sense. I think the New York dance community is extremely nice. Workshops are just like more about enjoying yourself, and all the instructors make that a very clear point. A, don't be on your phone necessarily. That's one rule they have, kind of. But B, just have fun, right? Like just feel the music. If this is how you want to do the move. Who cares? Maybe you're recording yourself, but this is not gonna go on YouTube under, and you're gonna be like graded out of a rubric for it. It's a lot of dance about being yourself. That's something with our last workshop. We were like trying to emphasize that we would both dance on a DDN team competitively for 4 years, but we don't want to necessarily bring that level of stress and tension to the workshop. I think what happens in DDN is if the leader or the choreographer is in front, you have this tendency to try to match the person in front of you as much as possible to be clean. But at workshops, it's like you watch that person in front of you as much as possible to get inspiration to see how you can get better, how you can express yourself, add looks, still swag, and more groove. And I think that's an aspect I miss about dancing. I have some friends on Talaash and other teams who are like, you should dance again. It'd be fun, to dance competitively. And I'm like, I will never do that ever again in my life. I loved Talaash. I loved competing dance. I did my time. I did it. I did the not sleeping, like coming home late from practice, being sore, I did that. This is like the time I want to dance without expectation and focus on my own journey rather than worrying about a performance that's going to be put on YouTube and graded like a rubric. Yeah, and that's just my personal view. People might be listening to this and they'll try to convince me still. It's not happening. It's not happening. I will stick to the workshops. I'm going to hope the workshops go somewhere, but that's it.
What if it was UT Chalka?
No, those people have good practice hours.
See, you said no and then hesitating.
But still,
But
too
that's
much
the
strain in
thing,
my
like,
body.
too much strain in your body. But that's interesting that you say that. If DDN changes, I'd be willing to come back in terms of being able to express yourself as dance, not great to the rubric, stuff like that. But all of those things that you said that you didn't want to come back to contributed to Texas' success this year's season. Being able to express and enjoy yourself as a dancer, like when those dance workshops happen and the person is in front, being able to dance in your own way, learn the step, but learn how to perform the step. Taller dancers learn their own way of performing instead of imitating the choreo person. So learning how to dance for yourself helps you become a better dancer in the circuit. I think it's just those lessons, like greater sustainability lessons, create better experiences, which is the purpose of this podcast.
Yeah. I think another main factor, which is kind of played in my back of my mind, I didn't realize until later, was I was scared about starting my own workshops because I wasn't necessarily the choreographer on Talaash. That makes sense. Like the girls were being in charge of the hip hops, and for bungos I'd help. But even then, it's not like it's just me. It'd be like Anubhav helping, or Jiri helping, or Vritik helping. So that was a collective effort. Kutu would be Miti and Nikhil. For a lot of the choreo on the team that we had, I okayed it, but it wasn't like I was choreographing the entire thing. So even though I was captain for all this time, I feel like there's this notion that I created the set by myself. That's not the case. I'm probably just an equal contributor to the team when it comes to choreography to 9 other people. One thing that really helped was the Cosmos year when I choreographed that, I think, second to last at Legends was the third to last segment, that like swag bungers piece. I remember that this was also around the time of my captaincy where I was starting to gain confidence in myself to actually execute on ideas. So the idea behind that piece was, a lot of teams in the past, you see a bunger in the fusion circuit, and it's usually hype, high energy, an intro or finale. But in the bunger circuit, not everything is hype. You have different styles of bunger. There's like Dhamal segments, there's Fumania segments, there's Dreamer segments that are still like really, really well executed. Sorry. But you have multiple styles of bunger that are not just, that have to fit this ender vibe, this ender finale vibe. So I try to take this to how I dance too. I wasn't necessarily someone that when I danced bunger that also has super high energy. Like I wouldn't say that's my like strong trait. I would say my strong trait is more the nutcore part, the swag part. It requires confidence and cockiness on stage. When I choreo that segment, I had in mind, and I actually remember there's this group of this TikTok account, BKL. It's like Bacho Kakil. It's like other people on TikTok too. That they dance with so much swag just doing bunga, but they're not using too much energy. But they look like they're having so much fun. And that was the idea. I was hesitant at first, but people on the team loved the segment. But then it's okay, people on the team obviously gonna love the segment because they're like on the team. And then I think it was at Dara that year. There was a non-bid comp that year. Ashwin told me one of the judges asked him if they can use that choreo and mix to. She was like a dance academy instructor for like little kids. She was like, do you think it'd be cool with whoever choreographed this piece if I like taught this to like my kids? And I actually felt like so. I was like, wow, dude, that was my first proper piece I choreo. And then people on TikTok do it, obviously, which is hype. And then I remember one of my friends, I think he's probably trying to gas me up, but like Arnav Rai on the team was like, dude, like that piece actually is not like revolutionary, a little exaggerating, but like, it opens a different avenue for that Bunga is not just hype. And I kind of take that now, especially now that I can't do high energy Bunga because I'll get tired. I focus more on the swag part too. I think workshops for Bunga now are very diluted, but you need your own twist to make it unique. Tushita, who does like Bunga Fusion, she teaches other stuff too, like Bali and Femme, but she does Bunga Fusion. That's her own little style that like appeals to people really well. She's really successful. Blash and I were convinced we could use, if we kind of lean into this like swaggier part of Bunga, like that's our brand. We're not just teaching any segment. We're gonna teach a segment that has like a little bit extra sauce, like a little bit extra knuckle to it, and something that's a little bit more expressive. That was the tipping point. We can really show the brand that sold us on the idea that there's at least some direction for what we want to do with this. With the girls, we made the mistake early that one situation I told you where we didn't show the appreciation enough. And you still get like confessions here and there that are like, oh, the girls are so good at dancing, etc. For us, especially senior year, it was me, Nick, and above, and the girls, their input and like what we need from them because they were able to deliver. And also the best thing about that was I feel like every choreo they choreoed got better each time too, which I think is not, you don't necessarily expect everyone's next product to be better than the previous one, but they were able to do it on a consistent basis. They were able to also, I think what goes unnoticed or untalked about is the fact that they have to deal with 28 or 30 dudes who are like constantly yelling or talking or like being belligerent or whatever. Like they have the patience to deal with that. I think that's like really underrated because even as like a dude, like I'm like, get me the hell out of here. But they were able to like keep up with that when they had to clean a piece. One of the girls, her name is Miti, she wanted to also like, so one of the issues we had the first year, we didn't really know how to incorporate them into the team. We had two of them as Simki and Twinkle as choreographers, and then Miti and Mehak as managers. And an issue with that, like a month or two later, was like we don't really know. Miti and Mehak were like, we don't really know what manager means. Like we'd tell them like what to do in terms of, oh, help out with this, help out with this, but there was no like concisive like specific role. So that was an issue, and we were able to sort that out by giving them a role that's less vague and has a little bit more direction. Another thing was, I think at the start it was like unsure if they wanted to dance the same level. Once they started coming to practice, they wanted to dance more in the segment. It's like, oh, like I have ideas for this production thing, and we're like Simki sent like this doc about she had a bunch of ideas for like different songs and production ideas. And even though she wasn't like there was no need for her to put in extra time to think of these ideas, but she genuinely cared to help out. Like she just reached out. She was like, "Hey, I have these cool ideas. I want to send them to." And she would send them. We were all super appreciative that we have another voice to add to like that creative aspect. But Miti also got really involved, and she wanted to like Miti super like, organized. Like a Notion, you know what Notion is?
Mhm.
She uses Notion, so that tells you the
You have
level.
no
She was
on
also
top of it.
pre-med at that point. So it was like she's gonna organize her entire life. So she was really good at. If I asked her to do something, because so she wanted to be more involved, so she wanted to try to be logistics chair. She got logistics chair, and it'd be like something as simple as, and I'd say logistics chair that at least for us was almost more difficult than a captain's job in the sense that they have to actually do all the nitty gritty work, but like reserving rooms or filling out these forms for comp and stuff like that. And she was able to do a good job of being able to handle that while also helping choreograph, while also managing her personal life, while also managing her academics. And I think all three or four of the girls, they were able to create an environment where they felt where the guys felt secure enough. That makes sense. Because I think sometimes it might be like, oh, there's girls here. It's a little weird, maybe a little awkward. But I think chill is like a really basic word to use. But they were all like welcoming enough to the point where people on the team didn't have to necessarily worry about asking questions. I do think I think the downside to that was that sometimes it's, oh, they're one of the bros. So there'll be a few issues where it's like some of the girls don't necessarily feel as respected because when they're in the front trying to teach, everyone's yapping and talking and not listening, and like they'd feel like, hey, yo, like where's our respect? So we'd have to like establish that with the team. Yo, team, like these girls are literally like the reason we're here. Give them the respect they deserve. But yeah, I'd say as much as they get shouted out here and there, I think they deserve definitely more credit than is actually seen. I think I'd like to believe we try to highlight them as much as we can while branding ourselves as an all guys team. We get jokes and comments about that and stuff, but I don't necessarily know if people know their value to the team, like actually. So I would just want to elaborate on that further because someone's got to say.
No, I think that's mainly why I brought up the topic because I think when people look at Texas Talash, and this is my opinion, before I had this conversation, not before, but like considering the female biases and stuff like that, I think some people can look at Texas Talash and be like, it's females' talent and ability being able to serve males. That feels like a very disparaging idea, and especially like this, like when that has been happening for centuries and centuries, and there's like human
Yeah,
history and like negative things. Like it feels like it's a like obviously it's not to that high level of it,
yeah,
but
but
it's
the
just like
dynamic is like,
phrase it properly. But like the dynamic is that the talent and skill of females is basically being able to use males, and just because there's that bias towards males, like it biases the bar is lower for males, they can do better being able to use the female talent and skill if the female talent and skill stayed with the female.
hmm
I think that's the narrative people get upset about. Is
hmm
not get upset about, which is completely valid. If Simki, Miti, I forgot the two other names, stayed on all females teams like Texas Tech, UT Austin, not UT. What's your guys' college?
UT Austin.
UT Austin. If it stayed at UT Austin, would that skill translate the same way for Texas Talash?
Maybe repeat that question.
If they stayed on an all females team or created a new team, would
hmm
that skill have translated in terms of the placings, the success that Texas Talash has had?
Oh, 100%. I think the captains are replaceable. I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but I think there's any other captains during these past 2, 3 years, the team maybe wouldn't be as successful necessarily. Like I'm not going to project that, but it would get somewhere to some point. Whereas like, I don't necessarily think the girls were like, if you take out the girls, the ceiling of the team decreases dramatically. Twinkle wasn't on a Bollywood team before, but Simki was on UTSA Sapna. Like she went to was on the all girls team her freshman year, then transferred to UT Austin her junior year after COVID. Mehak and Miti were both on Netball a co-ed team their freshman year. They moved over junior year. They didn't want to just be dancers. They wanted to have roles that have a little bit higher exec board position where it's like they're involved in the decision making and choreo making and stuff like that. And I think the Losh was like the perfect avenue for that at that point. But here's a new all guys team that does need some guidance and assistance. So like they're obviously very generous for they're very generous for joining us because
Yeah,
like you mentioned, I think a few of them did join, like they did RDC also, like a redefined dance company also, like their junior year, which I don't know how you do two dance teams at once. It's like a different level of time commitment. Like they still on improving their own hip hop, like improving their own hip hop skills outside of that. And even if there was a point where practices were clashing, it was kind of weird because it'd be like you have an obligation to the lodge because you're like not just a dancer on the team, you're like a board member. This is your decision, and like like how does this team versus this team satisfy like your purpose and fulfillment? Where do you want to spend your time? Do you need to go to this practice? Does she need to come at the lodge practice this day, or is she not needed? Does she need to go to this RDC practice, or can she come at the lodge? Vice versa. They did a good job managing priorities between Thalash and what they wanted to do. It's hard to manage priorities.
I'm glad you said that. The purpose of the question I was stating was if their talent was on an all females team, would the all females team have had as much success as Texas still has had? Just because there is that bias in DDN towards males. Or at least that's what I think. and I'm like, maybe the all-female team wouldn't have been as successful as Talaash, even if they were in the same roles. Does it make sense?
I think I understand your question. They've admitted that if they were on an all-girls team, they wouldn't have the same dancers if they joined Talaash. They've mentioned Talaash has challenged them
I
an
saw it in
all-girls or
the
co-ed
Legends
team where
video.
Mithy is an insane Kutu dancer, but she had to tell herself to step up her game when it comes to power because she's then competing with like dudes who are taller and 70 pounds heavier and are much stronger for hitting Kutu moves, right? Or for Bunga or any of these styles where it's about like power, right?
Hmm.
I think they've mentioned that being on an all guys team has kind of helped them push the bubble out of being more powerful and like adding more energy in ways I don't think necessarily an all girls team would have challenged them to do.
Got it. Interesting. That's a unique perspective. They're a huge, crucial part of the team. Usually, like some part of validation towards that is like making them a lead or making them captain. That's what you do for normally any team, right? But if you're an all males team, then that doesn't make sense if the leads are not an all male team and captains aren't male. But in my ideal, females should be able to be leads and the females should be able to be like captains, even for an all male team.
First thing with leads. So we tried to in Cosmos year we had leads for
The sun and then the aliens.
we tried to have leads for each planet, but what we wanted, I don't know if this will make the cut, but I remember for the Masha, we had Mithi come in the middle for a Kutu segment, like at the entrance of Kutu, and Simki was in Bollywood. One concern that we had was they're gonna look so good, better than everyone else, which we can't stop during COVID competitions. And our first year as captain, we had sorry, as our first year for Talaash, we had one girl on the team as manager, and like second year COVID comp two, we had a girl. And one comment we got was that because there's one girl, she inherently dances differently, and judges think that if even though she may be a better dancer, if she doesn't look the same, then she shouldn't be in the segment. So we were trying to find that balance of okay, wait, how can we put the girls in the segments without taking too much energy, without taking too much away from the cleanliness, but also highlighting them. That line got easier to handle once we got to like the second year. Like I'm sure if you see the hip hop video for Yuvan's hip hop and the Ramdas remix set, it's like Yuvan and then the next best two spots are like Miti and Simgi who like choreoed it. Like at that point we were able to like figure it out better. I think this past year for infection year, I don't think they really cared about necessarily. I don't think they really worried about that aspect of like where should the girls go. It's just oh if she's good enough, she's good enough. If she's not, she's not. You should lead and something else.
Captain.
Captain. I don't know if this will make the cut either, but this should be fun to talk about. I think 6 people tried out for captain my senior year, and Miti was really close to trying out or wanting to like try out. I think inevitably she didn't try out. I'm not exactly sure what the reasons were, but I think for Simki and Mehek didn't want to because they had other priorities too, where it's like school, and I think they see how damaging captain can be to like your mental health or your priorities. So they still want to enjoy Talash without having it consume their life. I think Miti was also kind of in a similar boat, but she like didn't want to do it, so she was still able to do other dance scenes or focus on like her like other academic obligations as you may. There's more I want to say about this. I'm trying to think of this is an example off the top of my head. I think an issue that we originally had with the girls choreoing. It's not an issue with the girls choreoing. The way the girls initially choreoed, how do I say this? The way the girls initially choreoed is they look very good doing it, but we weren't sure the guys would. There's that extra bit of groove. It doesn't necessarily accent the way. It doesn't really maximize the way a guy could dance. And honestly, looking back at it, it was like quite stupid of us for us to assume that. Eventually, for certain styles, we were able to like see, oh, like we can do this. We can hit those grooves more. We like find the middle ground in terms of not all groove and no power and no power. Sorry, all power and no groove, and like finding that mix of you don't have to like. There is choreo that is technically unisex. That makes sense. Like there's no such thing as like girls choreo or like guys choreo. But we were trying to balance them. We had like disagreements on certain moves. You look really good. You as a dancer look really good at this move. I guarantee you, if you try to teach this to the team, they're gonna look stupid. And like we'd be like, we don't know if we can do that. They'd fight back, we'd fight back, and it'd be like, oh, this is like disagreement of ideas. How do we kind of solve that? I think eventually just over time, after iterations of different choreo, we're able to find that middle ground where at some point it's, oh, this choreo is gas. Let's just do it. As we got trained more in hip hop, it's okay, this has a groove, we'll learn it. We'll take the girls' word for it. They're the ones that have done hip hop more than us. We didn't want to pencil them in too much and kind of put them in this box where the ideas can't grow.
Yeah, I love that choreo is unisex, so people can do any type of movement. It's just, I guess, how we've been brought up in terms of like boys can do like the bunga and could do more just because that's what we're used to in terms of movements. But we're not as flexible or as groovy with hip hop just because we're not like there's just a whole thing of, oh, that seems like feminine, but what does feminine mean? It's just a step at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
yeah, from an outside perspective, it seems like Texas Talash doesn't necessarily, because you brand yourself as an all-male team, it's, oh, we're just respecting the female contribution. I think a lot of people can immediately see that. So it champions that values, even though my whole conversation with you right now, that's obviously not true. So you think there's a better way of teams being able to recognize their female contribution?
A better way to recognize contribution. I don't know if this answers the question, but I'm on the stream of consciousness right now. Like a co-ed team accepts both guys and girls as dancers on the team. Whereas I think even now with other guys teams like Sazish or Viraset or things like that, they're not only recruiting girls, like they're recruiting girls not just as dancers, but they're recruiting girls as part of the behind the scenes bigger picture help. And I feel like as long as they get the respect and appreciation they deserve, then the name of the name of the team itself doesn't necessarily matter. But if Texas Delash didn't shout out the girls at all, and like people didn't know who they were, then it's kind of like, yeah, you're just like you're not appreciating like their efforts. But if you make a conscious effort to show what the contributions are, I don't necessarily see an issue with the name. And I think if you want to quote it as Flosh is an all guys team, but they have girls, I think that's also fine. I don't really find offense to it would be contradictory for me to find it offensive that people would say Talash is carried by the girls. We're an all guys team, we have girls on the team too. If you think we're only here because of the girls, I agree. So we're in agreement here. It's not like I'm disagreeing with you about why the team succeeds. It's just a different way of calling the team. As long as they get the shout out. I would think the other way around, where if it's an all girls team and the dude's helping with the bunga and two guys in the team, I wouldn't expect that team to call themselves a co-ed team.
Well, I think that's what happens because there's like UT Lux, UNC Chalka, where some guys, and I don't know if they're like helping in terms of the whole choreo process, but they still call themselves a co-ed team, even though most of their team. But I guess their whole purpose was never to like fully recruit girls; it was to recruit both genders. Actually, I take it back. You guys needed to learn to shout out girls more, right? Throughout your competitive season, being able to give them validation. In terms of the Instagram post, in Texas Talash itself says, "We are carried by the girls." That would be more spoken than just on International Women's Day putting an Instagram post, being like, "Hey, we appreciate our women and what they've done for us."
That's valid. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, no, low-key, the Losh Instagram bio should say UT Austin Premier All Guys Bollywood Dance Team, and then in parentheses, we also have girls. No, we are carried by the girls. That's a pretty accurate summary of the last 3 years. And here's the thing, like it's not even like I'm fighting it. It's literally a fact. I can't disprove it from being on the team for 2 years. And even this last year, I legitimately don't know how some conversations and those segments would have been done if we didn't have the girls. Because like I mentioned, it's not even just that they were helping choreo, all the other things they bring to the table and like the willingness they had to help the team. It wasn't that they weren't just choreographers. They wanted to help with other ideas in ways that like they weren't necessarily obligated to.
When I watched the Legends vlog and then I see them talking and like trying to give them giving an inspirational speech, I started tearing up. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so emotional. This is a team I'm not even a part of. Why do I care?"
They were so cute because they were all stretching, right? Like doing a run through, and I can see them like in the back. I don't know if they asked us beforehand if they want to say something. We were like kind of in a rush, not us, but the comp was like rushing us to get ready, moving on stuff, and they're like, "We have something to say." I'm like, "Of course." There'll be times we'd be like, "Dude, this is literally your team. At this point, this is literally your team. Do whatever you want with these dudes. They'll listen to you." And like they all like cuddled up, like and like standing like this, and like they have like their little phone out, tearing up, sobbing. Then we have like giant bear hug.